All right, so we're going to be going over the clinical portion for training today. So we'll go over charting and imaging. We're going to start with the preferences screen. I know yesterday we touched a little bit into the preferences, but if you go to File and then Preferences, this screen right here is going to be where you make the majority of the changes for your software. So you can see there's a bunch of different tabs in here. We're going to be working on the perio today, the chart, and the quick pick. But these other tabs are on here that you can see that are all the different preferences that you have. So some of the preferences in here will make changes for everyone's system. And then any preference in here that has a little asterisk next to it. So you can see like this little asterisk right here, down here at the bottom, that indicates that it's just workstation specific. And what workstation specific means is that computer. So anytime that computer is logged into Eaglesoft, those are the changes that are made for that specific workstation. So I wouldn't get too crazy into making a lot of different changes so everyone's computer looks different. You know, with some of these, it's nice just to have most of the computers look the same, just so that way if you guys work in different apps or you're bouncing back and forth, you don't go into one person's computer and it looks a lot different than the one you're typically used to working on. So I'm going to start over here in the chart tab. This chart tab right here is going to be where you're going to be making the changes for your clinical side. So these colors over here are going to be the colors that you see on your chart. So for my particular chart, I have blue as existing, and I'll show you what the charting looks like when we get in there. But my defective work would be this pink color. Any conditions that I chart are going to be gray. Condition NLP means condition no longer present. So let's say you chart an abscess and then they have a root canal, and then obviously the abscess is gone. So that abscess in the chart would turn green if I wanted to keep the old abscess on there. Some people just like to, just have it in the ledger so that way the chart doesn't get overwhelming, but they do have an option if you do want to keep no longer present charting on there. I have my proposed treatment items as red because to me red means like flag and alert. That's, it needs work done. And then once my work that I proposed has been completed and walked out, my color changes to this maroon color. Any color that I have as a watch on the tooth is going to be yellow. Refer it as black, walk out as this purple color, and rejected. There is an option where it says use solid fill. If I uncheck mark that box, it'll put hashes on my teeth. So sometimes if you ever notice like some apps have a solid color and other ones have these little lines in here, they would just need to go in and check mark the solid fill, or if you guys want everyone to have that hash, you guys can uncheck the solid fill box. That is a workstation specific preference. That would be something that you want to go in and kind of discuss as an office. Number one, what colors do you want to reflect on the chart? And number two, if you prefer solid fill or the lines. I personally prefer the solid fill. I think it's easier to see on the chart, but it varies per office. So I'd check that box here. I would also go in and make sure that you're checking this fourth box down here that says use colors on ledger. What that means is when you guys are in the chart, which we'll get to in a minute, on the bottom where all of my service codes are, past and previous, and future, proposed, all those items in the ledger will be in color. I think that helps to be able to see what's going on at a quick glance. So if you're looking at red font typing, that means you know those items need to be proposed. If you're looking at blue in mine, it's already existing, and so on and so forth. If you ever notice, these over here in the upper left-hand corner, it says show these chart items by default. I would check mark all of, 8 boxes. This means that it's going to show these items on the chart, whether it's been completed, existing, conditions, what's been walked out, accepted, so on and so forth. If you ever notice that charting items are not coming up on your chart, so like let's say you propose a crown and it's been completed and all of a sudden you're not seeing that crown on the chart, most of the time one of these boxes got check marked. Sometimes they come, I don't know how they get uncheck marked if someone accidentally unclicks them or what's going on, but this is an area to double check to make sure all of these are check marked. You can show the perio items on your clinical chart if you want. I do not do that. I think it's overwhelming to see all the pocket depths on each tooth on the chart. When we get into the perio chart, it's very easy to see what you're looking at when you get into probing, but I leave mine unchecked because I don't want to see all of that, but you guys can always just go in here and do that if you'd like. Again, it is another item that is workstation specific. I leave my default surface view on summary surfaces. I'll show you the difference between summary and detailed when we get there, but I always like to point out if it's defaulting when you go to chart or propose an item and it's giving you a million different options, you probably have it set to detailed. So I always leave mine on summary. It's easy to toggle back and forth, but I leave mine on summary. Once you hit OK, changes made will not take effect until you log off and log back on. I would say that's about 9 times out of 10 you'll see the changes without having to log off and log back on, but if you don't, then the first recommendation would be log off and log back on, then you should see any changes that you make. So I'm going to show you what we just talked about in the chart. There are 2 different screens. Again, if you hit F2 on your keyboard, it will label everything on your screen for you. If you hit F2 again, it takes it off. So when you get started, you can leave that on there if it helps, just to kind of get a feel for what everything is named as. The cheesy slogan is F2 is a friend for you. So in most screens, if you hit F2, it will populate either patient's names or it will populate the code list for you. So it's a quick access key to be able to get a lot of different ways in the software. So some people decide to work most of their time out of the schedule. So if you click on the schedule, and you can see all of your clinical icons up here. You can get to the chart by clicking on a patient's name and hitting chart right here. That's one way to do it. The second way to do it is working out of the clinical screen. So this is the practice management screen. So this is the screen that most of the front desk will be working out of most of the time, or the schedule. The clinical team can work out of what's called the clinical view, which is clicking on the other monitor. And this brings you to all of your areas for your clinical team. So this is another option to do it as well. You can get to the schedule from this little clock right here. It's called on schedule. So if I click that clock, I can get to it from that way as well. So there's about 3 ways to do everything in Eaglesoft. It's just depending on what works better for you. I'll show you a couple ways, but if you get to it from a different way once you start playing around with it, it's probably not wrong. It's just, like I said, there's multiple ways to get to everywhere. So you can see that you have your perio, you can get to your perio from here, your chart from here. So if you click on this little cupboard right here, it'll also bring you to a chart for the patient that you just brought up last time. It tells you who you're on right here. If you look under the toolbar, it says Tyler Davies. So if you're like, why does Tyler's chart keep opening? Again, his name's right here on the little bar right here, Tyler Davies. If you're like, how the heck do I keep getting to that patient? You probably were highlighted on his name from the schedule. And if you're on his name from the schedule, that's whose name you were on last. So if you wanted to change your patient, you would just hit this chair where it says select patient, and you can choose a new patient to get to. So I personally think it's easier to open up a chart from the schedule. That's usually how I do it, but I did want to show you that there is another way to get to the chart. So if I'm in the schedule here, and I forgot to move my patients, so I apologize. We're going to go into Charles' chart right here. Anytime that there's a red highlight box on that patient's name, that's whose option you're going to open up to. If you're clicked off of that patient's name and you're just in a blank box like I am right here, and I were to hit chart, that will bring up my patient list. So that's how I can search for a patient. I always leave my auto search box. What that means is as I begin to type, my names will populate by those letters. I also leave my show inactive box uncheck marked, because if you have a lot of duplicate patients and you inactivate them, or you have patients that are no longer a patient, they left your practice for whatever reason, if you have the show inactive check marked, you're going to see, I don't think I have any, but it's just going to make your list way longer. And like if James was a duplicate patient, I'll see James in this black font. And then any patient that's inactivated will be a light gray font. So that's how you know the difference between a patient that's active and not activated. And if you do try to get into a patient who is inactive, it will prompt you and say, this patient's inactive, would you like to activate them? So you won't accidentally chart anything or schedule an inactive patient. I say that 5 times fast, but I just like to uncheck mark it just because it makes my list shorter. You can sort by last name, first name, patient ID, home phone, work phone, cell phone. I know we touched on that yesterday, but just a reminder, those are all the ways that you can search for your patient. So I'm just going to go into Charles's chart, and the chart icon looks like a little tooth with a red and a blue on it. So if you click on the chart, any alerts, the patient history alerts from that medical history will appear right here. So you can read them and then hit OK. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see all of your images that have to deal with Charles. So you can see any x-rays that have been taken, his intraoral photos, his patient photo. You know, you can get crazy. If you were to highlight a tooth, like let's see how I highlighted tooth number 1, any picture that I have associated with tooth number 1 will appear over here on the left-hand side. And we'll cover imaging in a little bit because I know you guys want to use the imaging portion of Eaglesoft, so we will get to that, but I just want to point out that you can see the images at a quick glance over here. If you double click on it, it will bring you into their actual imaging, but I just like to point out that you can do that. If I hit tooth 16, it'll bring up any pictures that I have associated with tooth 16. So that's a really nice quick view at a glance to see if you have any x-rays. With that little eye, it kind of looks like a line, I guess, for some people. That actually means image. It's a capital I. So anytime that you see an I next to these numbers right here, or a line, whatever you want to call it, that does mean that there's an image associated. So then you know that there is for sure a picture with that patient. You can see my different colors on the ledger here. So now you can see that, and down here is what I was talking about, the show colors on ledger from that settings preference. If you didn't have that box check marked, all of the writing down here would be in all black, similar to this right here. So I like to see the different colors as I'm scrolling through the ledger of what's proposed and what has been completed, walked out, so on and so forth. That's my abscess, that was green. That's no longer present. You can see my blue was meant existing. So what existing in Eaglesoft means is that that patient already had that treatment done, whether it was in your office or not, it will be this blue color. Any items that were proposed and then been completed in your system, such as like you propose a crown and then you walk it out, it will be red and then it will turn to this maroon color. So some offices choose to have their existing colors match the completed work if they do not care about whether the work was done in office since you started using Eaglesoft or if it's been done prior by another provider. So how you would go ahead and treatment plan is we have these buttons over here. These are called quick pick buttons. We will work on getting these set up for you. You do not have to have the same ones that I have. These are going to be your most frequently used codes in the office. You have 22 buttons to work with. So I have an exam button. So if I highlight this little arrow right here, I have my comp exam, my detailed exam, limited exam, periodic exam, and I just have some random buttons on here just because I showed people how to add codes to these buttons. And then I have an x-ray button. So if I click this little x-ray arrow, I have 4 bite wings, single bite wings, 2 PAs, PANs, all of that. And then I have my hygiene codes up at the top. So I have a Prophy button for adults. So I have A Pro for adult Prophy. And these are my exploding codes. So I have adult Prophy, exam, PAN, and 4 bite wings. So if I were to choose this exploding code, it would put all of those codes on my chart for me. So it's a little bit faster. You can have them all separate if you'd like, and you can have the option. So like I just have a Prophy right here. So like let's say that patient came in and only had a Prophy done, I can just select that option But if they had, you know, if it was a new patient, I could select this. So you can group all of your codes to make it faster. To treatment plan. And then I have a child prophy button. So you can see I have my fluoride, child prophy, exam, fluoride, bite wings, and then I have them separate down here. I also included sealants. I know some offices do have sealant buttons if you guys do a lot of sealants. And then I have a perio button, so I have all my scaling and root planing, my FMD, my perio maintenance. So I have those buttons. And then I have a cone beam button. I have a button for composites for anterior and composites for posterior. Inlays and onlays, PFMs, buildups, root canals. I don't even know what this one is. Apparently I do gingivectomies. So I have all these different codes. I have a denture button. So you guys can get creative. This would be a task that I would work on together. So that way, hygiene, I would have you guys work together on which buttons or which codes that you frequently use. So I would definitely recommend having an adult prophy button and a child prophy button and a perio button. Whether or not you want sealants on there, you can do that as well. I would definitely have an exam button and a bite wing button or an x-ray button. And then doc and assistants, you guys can work on which codes that you frequently use. You don't have to put every single code that you've ever used or build out in your office on these codes. These are just supposed to be your most frequently ones, frequently used buttons. If there's ever a code that you're looking for that you didn't add to a button, you can still treatment plan it, you can still propose it, you can still walk it out. There's always a button called service. So if I hit this service button, it'll bring me to all of my different service codes that I have into my computer. So let's say I didn't have a crown repair, you know, I can use that code right here and I can add it to my chart without it being on a button. So you don't ever have to be like, oh, I need every single code ever used. Don't do that. Just use your most frequently ones. They're called quick pick buttons to make charting quicker for you. There is a condition button. So all the conditions would be, you know, if they had a chipped tooth, congenitally missing, cracked tooth. There is a decay choice for here. So decay, the option would be, you know, it could be a geriatric patient that you're not going to treat that tooth, but you do want to chart that they have decay. Or same thing on the other side, if you have a primary tooth that's really, you know, wiggly, it's about to fall out in the next month, you're not going to treat that tooth, but you still want to chart decay. There's a decay option right there for you. Diastema. So there's a bunch of different conditions that you can chart on your chart for you. If you don't see one on here that you want to add, you can go to new. And by selecting new, I'll just do test. You name it. The draw type is what it's going to be drawing on the chart for you. So let's just do build up. You can only have 5. Oh, maybe it lets you do more. And this is where you pick the color for that new code that you're having. Let's just do purple. The action code means what you want it to be doing on the chart. So this is where it can get a little confusing. So for build up, what would make the most sense? I'll just show you what it looks like. And button group, if you want to add it to a button, you can do that right there. For build up, the affected area means which part of the tooth are you working on. So affected would be, it would be the whole tooth. If it was decay or a composite or anything like that, you'd be picking a surface. If it was a root canal or an abscess, it'd be affecting the root, you would pick root. So we'll just hit OK. And then let's just use it on a tooth, one that doesn't have any. And now you can see that I put that little gray square on that tooth for me because that's what I told it to draw. So it can get a little crazy if you're trying to add a bunch of new codes on here. If you ever have any issues, feel free to give me a call. I'll help walk you through this, or you can call the PTC if I'm in a training and can't get to you right then. The PTC can remote in and help you with adding conditions as well. All right, so you have your permanent button right here. So this would be your permanent teeth. There's a primary icon to change it to primary teeth. The select all would be selecting all of the teeth. Clear all would be clearing all the teeth that you're highlighting. You can highlight all the upper. So if you have a patient that has dentures and they have an upper denture, you can highlight all the upper teeth versus having to go through and manually click each tooth. That can take a while. So I would use the button to hit all upper. You can change it to do all lower. You can do upper left. Let's say you're proposing, scaling and root planing for different quadrants. You can do it that way. If you select all teeth, you can change all the teeth to primary teeth. So you can see what the chart looks like to have all primary teeth. So if you have a little kiddo in the chair, you can do that. You can select all and bring it back to permanent. If you have a patient that, had a tooth that was always primary, you can have mixed dentition by just highlighting the teeth to change which ones you want to change. So that's how you do mixed dentition. If you have a child that is mostly primary, but they have their molars, the molars don't disappear. You would just highlight the spot that the molars normally would be and hit permanent, and you can add those molars back in there. So I'm going to take a little break right here. I'm throwing a lot at you, so I'm going to see if anyone has any questions. See if I can find the chat here. Everyone feeling okay so far? Okay. Doing all right? All right. We'll take little pauses to make sure everyone's still not sleeping yet. So I know it's a lot that we have. So I'm going to do select all, and I'm going to turn them all back to permanent teeth. So what you can do, let's go ahead and propose any treatment items. So let's say Charles has a lot going on. So let me find a patient that doesn't have very much going on. Perfect, Chelsea right here. New patient. I'm gonna delete these off here. Okay, so let's say that Chelsea came in, we had some bite wings taken, and we noticed that 2 and 3 need some fillings. I'm going to choose, oh good, Lori. It seems pretty intuitive, the charting. So let's highlight the composite teeth. So I'm going to do composite posterior because there are different codings and billing numbers for composite, like anterior teeth versus posterior. Eaglesoft does assume that you know if it's a posterior tooth or an anterior tooth, which is why I have the two different buttons. So I'm going to choose composite posterior because I'm on a posterior tooth. And we are going to be proposing this treatment for Chelsea. So I'm going to leave this on proposed. You can choose who the provider is right here. If you, it'll default to doc since you guys have a one doctor, but if you had multiple doctors, you could choose who it was doing it. Or if this was a hygiene and you guys are keeping track of production per hygienist, like let's say this was a prophy, you can change the name right here if it wasn't the default, the name that was doing the service. The date that you're proposing it, it will populate the fee based off of your fees, the service codes when you guys set up your fees. You can phase the treatment right here. So I know we talked about treatment planning yesterday, how to put that where the number sign is on the treatment plan. You can phase it here if you like. So if you know it's a big treatment plan and you can do it right now, or you can go back in and phase it later on that treatment plan icon. I just like to point that out because there is 2 ways to do it. We're leaving the response as proposed. Here's a box for remarks for unusual services. Same thing that's on that box for the treatment plan if you needed to say, a cracked tooth or decay, or if it was something that was going on. Under that File Preferences box, remember when I said that I have mine default to Summary Surfaces? See how the Summary Surface is highlighted? This is just giving me my, mesial, occlusal, distal, lingual, buccal options. If I had it default to Detailed Surfaces, every time I go to Treatment Plan, it's going to show up as this way. So it just depends on how type A you are, I guess would be the right word, if you want to actually, choose, the mesial pit, if you want it to be a detailed surface, or if you're happier with the summary surfaces just hitting MO. I think this is a little bit easier, but some people like to really get into the details here, so you can do detailed surfaces if you like. But that's what I was talking about under File Preferences and Chart. I have mine default to summary, but this is how you toggle back and forth. So if you have a one-off case where you just really want to get into the line angles or the grooves or all of that, you can absolutely do that. But I just have mine default to summary surfaces. So then I would just hit MOD. Once I hit OK, you can see that on my chart, because I have red as proposed, I have the red writing on my chart. Now you can see down here at the bottom as well, you can see the date that it was proposed, the provider who's going to do it. This is the number sign. So this, if I chose a phase, like let's say I wanted to do this phase 1, and then 14 and 15 needed composites as well. I could put in phase 2 here. Let's say we want to start with the upper right and do, the left second, you could do that. The description of what it is, the tooth number, the surface that we're proposing, the status is proposed, the amount that it would cost. So that's how you put on a proposed treatment plan. If she came in and she already had fillings on teeth 4 and 5, it would be the same thing. Let's say I would just click composite. Instead of leaving it under proposed, I would change that to existing because it's existing in her mouth. On my chart, it's blue. It will automatically default to other provider. So any treatment that you guys walk out going forward will automatically be added into this chart for you. But if you guys are deciding to chart existing restorations for patients that are coming in, that's a decision you guys want to make if you want to just start charting going forward for what you guys are doing in the office, or if you guys have been charting or would like to chart existing restorations, this is how you do it. You choose existing. If you know that another provider did it, then just leave it on other provider. Patients never know what's going on in their mouth. Some people will be like, I don't even have a crown. You're like, you have 8. So I would just leave the date on as today or the date that you're charting that existing service, because most likely they do not know when they had these fillings done. And then you can choose what they had and hit OK. And now you can see that my existing surfaces when you're putting in there is blue. Now, if I were to go walk out 2 and 3, let's say we did 2 and 3 today, I'm just going to highlight. If you click on it and you move the mouse down, it only highlights one at a time. To highlight multiple teeth, just hold down Shift on the keyboard and you can highlight multiple items by holding down Shift and clicking. So then I can go into, we're all done with these services, so I'm going to right click on my mouse and hit post to walk out. And now you can see that it's been walked out. It changed my red to this purple color. So you don't have to go in and change these. As soon as you hit post to walk out and you hit save, you always have to hit save. If you try to X out without hitting save, it'll ask you, do you want to save? So don't worry, you can put in a bunch of treatment in here, and if you accidentally go to hit X before you hit save, it will ask you, do you want to save the changes that you made? So you can never, it'll be really hard to put in a bunch of things in Eaglesoft and then leave a screen without it saying, hey, don't forget to save it, or did you want to make this change? It'll always alert you. So you don't have to go back in and do anything. As soon as you hit post to walk out and that patient goes up front, it will automatically change the chart for you. So that's how you propose items. Whatever teeth you highlight, so if you accidentally highlight a tooth and you're like, oh man, how do I get off these teeth? If you just click that tooth again, it will unhighlight it for you, or again, you have the clear all. So if you accidentally meant to click this tooth, as soon as you start clicking around, it's going to highlight all these teeth. And you'd be like, oh, so instead of having to go back in and re-clicking on those teeth, I just always recommend just hit clear all. It doesn't clear any of the treatment on there. It just clears all the highlights of the teeth that you have. So if you do have, like, let's say tooth number 25 needs, you know, they grind their teeth, so they need an occlusal. We're proposing it, but then tooth 25 needs an MO. You would do it separately. The only time you highlight multiple teeth to propose a treatment is if they all need the exact same thing. Like, you can't choose tooth 7 to have an occlusal, and then tooth 8 to have an MOD, and then tooth 9 to have a DO. You have to do that individually. So the only time you can highlight multiple teeth at once is if they all have, you know, the same code that you need to propose. So you can see that. But if you have all 4 wisdom teeth that are missing, you can highlight all 4 of those. If you do extracted, so I hit extract because I have that button on mine. It's existing. It automatically defaulted it to other provider. I can hit OK. It's going to put an X through those teeth. That means extracted. If they're just missing, you can choose missing and hit OK. In mine, my condition is gray. Remember, under the file preferences, that my chart color was gray. So those are the 2 options to show your teeth that are either missing. So that would mean typically congenitally missing, but some people just choose to chart missing because they don't like these big X's. But it will tell you whether it's missing down here or if it was extracted. So depends on how, you know, detail oriented you want to get with the charts. If you actually want to be charting, yes, we know for sure it was extracted, or yes, we know it was congenitally missing. You can make those options, but some people just do not like these X's, so they opt to do this. So those are how you would chart any missing teeth or extracted. So that'll just be a topic of conversation of how you guys want to do it in your practice. So I'll send a summary email, so I'm just actually going to write that down. So missing teeth, colors, and if you guys want to chart existing, or if you just want to chart completed. Just so you guys know what to talk about once we end our training call. Okay, any questions so far?
No.
No? Okay. If they're impacted or unerupted third molars, that's under condition. Yes, there is a condition option as well. Yep, so if I highlight 2 teeth right here, you can go to condition, and you can go to, did I pass it? Missing tooth, or there's a congenitally missing tooth, so I can use congenitally missing. And again, it's under a condition for me, so it's going to look the same. So you can actually chart congenitally missing versus just missing as well. You're absolutely correct. So now you can see all 3 options. Yep. So if you go to condition and you go to, you can have diastemas, you can have mesial drift, so you can use that. And I don't think I have mine showing on the chart, so let's see. So sometimes if you use a condition code and you notice, like I just used the mesial drift and it did not do anything on my chart, but you can see it in the ledger. And this might happen with some of your codes, so I do like to point this out, so I'm glad this happened. If you edit the code, mesial drift, malposition, button group. Okay, well, it should be showing up then. Oh, it is on here. Okay, do you see this little arrow really teeny tiny on tooth number 20 between it? There's a gray arrow, so it'll say if it was a distal drift, it would have an arrow going the opposite direction. But if you ever see a code under like a condition that is not appearing, remember, just go in and edit it. And there's probably a draw type that's missing. And that happens sometimes with codes. So if it's showing up blank on the chart, you need to add a draw type of what you want it to draw. Because if it's missing, it doesn't know what to draw, if that makes sense. I know it gets a little complicated. So if you can't figure it out, like I said, reach out to me. I'm happy to remote in, or the PTC, and we can get some of these codes set up if you're finding that they're not appearing on the chart. Most of them do show up, but occasionally they don't. So that's why I like to point out, you'll just have to edit it, choose what you want it to draw on the chart, pick a color. You don't have to pick a color because the colors and the preferences is going to override it. What the action code is, and if you want it to add to a button group, you hit OK, and then it will change that for you. So if you ever see something that's not showing up. Another way to do it too is if that file preferences, if you're like, what the heck, my draw type set up, I'm not seeing it on the chart. If you highlight the tooth and right click, mine says don't show on chart right now because it's showing on the chart. You can take it off the chart. Or so let's say I take it off. I can go back on to tooth number, I think it was 20. Tooth 20, I can highlight that and then hit show on chart. The reason, and now it's back on there, the reason it was not showing up on the chart is again because under file preferences, under the chart icon, show these items on chart by default, these were uncheck marked. So if you're noticing that they're not showing up every time and you have to right click and hit show on chart, one of these is probably uncheck marked. So just make sure those are all check marked. So those are two ways to know. So first step, what I would do is when you get your Eaglesoft sent drop down to your database, some of these buttons are going to be set up. These are not going to be set up like mine. They could be with old codes. They could be, I don't know. I don't know how the codes get dropped over, honestly. I just know that some of these buttons will be set up. What you're going to want to do is these are the steps that I would follow. First of all, I would go to reports. And if you hit Q on the keyboard, it's going to bring you down to all the Qs. You can scroll, it just takes a while. So if you just, whatever letter of the report, if you know the name, you can find it, hit that on the keyboard, it will bring you to those letters. And you're going to want to run the Quick Pick Assignment Master. Once I hit process, this is going to tell me every code that I have under my current buttons. So I would print this off and I would go through it. I'd be like, button number 1, I want to be my exams. And then I would jot down what codes you want to be under your exam button. So limited, comp, periodic, whatever your most frequently used exam codes are. Button number 2, I want that to be my X-ray tab. So you put down your most, and then I would jot down your frequently used X-ray tabs, or codes, sorry, not tabs. Adult prophy, child prophy, perio, if you want a sealant button. And just go through which, cross off the codes that you're never going to use. Like some of these are really old codes in my system in particular. So cross off the ones you don't want. And then you have an outline and a visual of what you want to actually add under those codes. The reason I do this is I know we're trying to go paperless here, but this is the easiest way to do it because once you're looking at all this, you have a game plan of what you need to add. So I'm going to talk about how you add these codes to your Quick Pick buttons now. So there's 2 steps. The first step is going to be going to our favorite tab, is File Preferences. You guys are going to be so sick of me saying that by the end of this call. And we're going to go over to the Quick Pick tab over here. This is where all of my button names are. So let's say you're like, you know what, I don't do bridges. Do you see right here where it says right click on hyperlink to unassigned button? So if I'm like, I never do these bridges, I just right click. Now I unassigned that button. So you can go through if you're like, you know what, this is a hot mess. I'd rather just start from the beginning. You can right click all of these buttons and take off the name. And then you click on button number 17. Anything that's blue with an underline is a hyperlink. So I'm going to click this button number 17, and that's going to bring me to my code list. All of my service codes are on here. So then I can say, oh, I do a lot of space maintainers. So I want my space maintainer to be my button group. If I use it right away without changing anything, now button number 17 is going to be space maintainer. Let's say I never do this other bridge. Right click it, click on button number 18, pick which button I want to be, and let me find one that would even make sense. Let's just do this. If you just use it, it'll put in whatever that is. Notice for this button 18, it just put in the code and there's no name. So if I re-click on button 18, it's going to bring me to that code that I'm already using. And if I hit edit, you can see there's no display abbreviation in there. So whatever that display abbreviation is going to be what that reads on the code on the button chart. So I could say you get 5 characters. So I'm just going to do crown. And I hit OK. Use. And now you can see that it's named crown. So if you don't like the way some of these are named, like notice how I have 4 bite wings for this one. If I wanted my button group for my 4 bite wings to be named X-ray instead of 4 bite wings, I could just edit the code and just change the display abbreviation to X-ray and hit OK and use, and now I know that's X-rays. So now when I X out of here and I go into the chart, it's now renamed X-ray. I have a space maintainer button and I have a crown button. So that's the first step, is just naming the button groups. The second step is going to be actually going into these codes. So we're going to go to list and we're going to go down to service codes. Notice it's the same exact screen as what you're picking your button group to be. So just another way to get there. But this is how you add them to each button. So once I get my buttons named and I have a good idea of where I want what, I go and find the code that I want. And this is how you add a code to a button and remove it. It's the same exact process. And I will say it's a lot of work to get these buttons set up. It'll take some patience, but you only have to do it one time. So I always like to remind everyone, like, it's a little bit tedious, but if you have a couple people working on it and you guys are putting your minds together and you have a game plan, which is why I always recommend having run that list first, because then this goes by so fast. It's just figuring out what codes you want under what button. So, and you can continue to change it. It's just, you know. So find a code that you want. So I'm going to pick just this occlusal film and hit edit. This is where you're going to get to. Over here on the right-hand side is a button called chart setup. So you're going to go to list, service code, find your service code that you want to edit, and go to chart setup. Notice this button group right here. It says button group. If I click there, this brings me to all of my quick pick buttons that I created, and I can choose which button I want to add it in. Or let's say it was under cone beam and I never use this code. I'm like, I want to take this off of that button. I just do the same thing for button group. I go all the way to the top and I hit none. And that would take that off of the chart for me. Take it off of the quick pick buttons. So let's say I wanted to add it, I pick one. Let's say I wanted to remove it, I choose none. And some of you will never have to do this in your entire life. So this, probably could be checking out, but a couple of you are going to have to take control of this. So I can go through the process again really quick if you'd like, but I will put it in a summary email of the different steps too, so that way you have something to refer to. So I'll take a brief pause here and see if anyone has any questions.
No.
Not yet? Okay. So it's 3 steps. First step, run the report and figure out what codes you want under each button. Second step, go to File, Preferences, Quick Pick tab, actually pick your codes for the buttons, or button names. And then third step, go into List, Service Codes, and just start adding and removing them. And then your buttons will look how you want them, but similar to being able to chart now. And we'll help you with this too, you guys. So when you get your data dropped on the 4th, January 4th, over to you, part of the setup is making sure that we get all these buttons set up for you. So I just like to go over it, but we'll have someone on the call with you to go through this so you can kind of get in the flow. So don't panic too much. We'll be there. So this is part of that setup day. So when you get all the cleanup and setup process in the morning, this is part of that process here. So, okay, fun stuff. So let's go into notes for right now. Or do you want to take a quick break, or do you guys want to keep going for a little bit longer? You can take 5 if anyone has to use the bathroom, or I can keep plugging along. Okay. All right, we'll go to notes. So 2 ways to get to notes from the schedule. You can go to click the patient that you want to use, and there's a note history, or you can do it from the chart. So I'll show you what it looks like from the chart. Down here on the bottom, if you click note history, it's going to bring you to the exact same spot. It's a little clipboard with a piece of paper. It'll bring you to this screen. Or if I'm on this patient and I'm highlighted on Chelsea and I hit note history, notice it's the exact same screen, just 2 ways to get to it. If you do it from the schedule, like I just did, it's going to default my note to a general note, and you'll have to make sure that you go in and change it to a chart note if you're doing a chart note. If you do it from the actual chart, this little clipboard, it'll default to a chart note from you. So if you're doing a clinical note, that's the easiest way in my opinion, so then you're not having to remember to change it to a chart note. The reason you want to make sure it's a chart note is because this is how it filters all of your notes for you. So if you have a chart note, you can have account notes, you can have an image note, you can have a pre-auth note, all these different types of notes that you can have. Anything clinical, I like to keep under chart. So that way, if worst case scenario, you get audited or the patient needs, moved out of state and they want to send their notes to their new dentist or whatever the reason may be, it's easier to filter the notes out if you are choosing a note type. If everything's defaulting under general, over here you can see there's note types. This little funnel right here is gray right now because I have no filters on. Let's say I want to start filtering my notes and I only want to see chart notes. I can hit clear all and just check mark my chart notes to read those patients' chart notes. If I wasn't choosing a note type as that chart note, if everything was under general, there's no way for me to filter. So now when I go through and I hit, now see how I have a recall note, general note. So if this little funnel turns green, if you can't find a specific note, let me just uncheck mark these three. You can see that funnel turned green. And now all of a sudden, you know, if you're trying to find a note that you're looking for, you're like, what the heck? That means there's a filter, it probably filtered out that note. So then you just want to go in and hit check all. But that's how you can filter your notes, which is why it's important to change the note type. So there's going to be auto templates that you guys are going to want to, auto note templates that you're going to want to set up, and we can work on doing that together when you guys get your data dropped. But this is going to be something that front desk can do. Doc, you can have your notes. Assistants can have templates. Hygiene, you guys can have your own notes. Because when you open up this note box here, you can just type in here. You can just, and I have my size really big. Down here is a little plus or minus bar. You can make that smaller. You can make it bigger. So it's just to help you read while you're typing. And up here at the top is another plus and minus bar in the upper right-hand corner. So if you slide that bar, it'll make those notes smaller or bigger. So you can see that those are the ways to make this smaller or bigger. I just leave it bigger because it's easier for you guys to see from my computer, but you have a blank box down here. So you can just start typing blah, 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 whatever you want for that note. But then you're just typing all day, every day. What you can set up are what are called auto notes. So if I click on this blue hyperlink, you can create all these notes. So I recommend putting the name of the note because these go in alphabetical order. So I have denture dash when I'm doing adjustment, exam dash emergency, hygiene dash child prophy, hygiene dash child prophy with fluoride, and you can pick different colors. So you can choose if restorative is going to be one color, or if you want crowns to be one color, if you want hygiene prophies to be one color, and then scaling a root plane to be another. So this is another option of a conversation you guys are going to have for which color you guys want to be. It does help filter when you're looking at the notes. You know, some hygiene likes to be green, front desk like to be, you know, red, and doctor likes to be blue, or you can be black. It's just whatever color you want your notes to be. So what I mean by an auto note, you'll go in and you'll hit new, but we'll do it on a different screen. So I just want to say if you want to create a new one, you can do it from this screen. And I call the auto note the skeleton of your note. So let me use one that I have. I think this one is just, let me make sure. So when you create all of your skeleton of a notes and you go to use it, I'm going to choose which note I want and I'm going to hit use. This is going to be the template. So now once you have your template set up, every time you go to use this note, all you have to do is type in what changes you did for that particular patient. So that way everyone's notes are a little bit more mainstream, you know, streamlined to where you're all filling out the same thing. So plaque level, calc level, scaled, and then you could say, asked mom about fluoride today. She said not, you know, whatever reason you want to put in there. So you can still add your own pizzazz to each note and make it as customized to your patient as you want, but everyone's filling out the same spot right here. So it's nice to set up these templates. So you can have them for, like I have one for anesthetic. Obviously this is like super blank, but you can have, you know, all these different note types. And then when you go to use them, I don't want to dive into that yet. Bear with me here. So when I go to use this prophy note, I can type in whatever changes I need. And then at the very bottom, I can put in whatever I want, or a perio chart, patient denied today, or whatever you want to put in here. So I would make sure that we go in and we set up our auto notes. So then that way when you hit save, and always hit save in the middle. I do like to point this out because there's save as auto note. If you're saving each note for every patient as an auto note, this list over here is going to get really crazy. You're going to have a million different hygiene prophy notes with specific details for that patient. So I don't know why they didn't flip-flop these buttons. I didn't create the software, but in the middle is the save note button. So that way it just saves that particular note for that patient. Otherwise you'll have a million auto note templates and it gets a little crazy. So if I save note, now you can see up here at the top, the most recent note is going to go at the top. The username for whoever is logged in. So I'm Bonnie Biggs for my Patterson one, so that's why my initials are here. My note type is a chart. If you wanted to edit that note, let's say you didn't have time to finish it, just simply double click in that box and you can continue typing. I can't type when people watch though. There we go. And then you can continue and then just hit save note and it will be up at the top. If you're clicked in that box right here, you can type in this box right, or it won't let you type, but it won't change the color. As soon as you click off of it, it'll give you the color. So some people, when you guys are first making your notes and you only have one note in the chart and you're highlighted on it, people are like, why aren't my colors showing up? As soon as you add another note, it'll show it to you. But if you're clicked on that note, it leaves the font in black. Why? I have no idea, but that's just where it is. Once, if you notice right here, how I have a line through this note, the reason that note has a line through it, and if you see, that means that I went in and I modified that note after the end of day has been run. So as soon as front desk runs what's called end of day, which would be your closing the books for that day, and you go in and modify the note, it's similar to if you make a change in a note in a chart and you're supposed to, redate it and re-sign the note, and say why you modified the note. It just essentially copies that note and puts it above it, but it will put a line through that original note. So that's why if you're like, let's say you forget to finish a note from yesterday and you begin to edit that note from the day before and you save it as today's date, once you hit save, it's going to put a line through the note and just duplicate it and put it on top. So you try to get your notes done before the end of the day. It doesn't matter if you have these in here. It's just some people don't like the way it looks. But for legality reasons, it does have to say that that note was modified from the original date. So that's just Eaglesoft's way of keeping track of that for you. Okay, let's see here. Along with notes, when you're creating your notes in your auto note template, this is where you choose the color right here. So while you're typing, it will change it all for you. So if I just put in a bunch of letters here and you're like, okay, what color do we guys want to be? It'll change it all for you. So as soon as you start, you don't have to highlight it and change it. As whatever's typed in that box, you can go ahead and just click the color of the note while you're going. So that way you can see if you're like, oh, I want to be, let's be a green. Well, some of these greens are like impossible to read. Like this pale green, there's no way. So you can be like, okay, well, let's see what lime green looks like. It's a little bit better, but forest green looks better, right? So you can just choose your colors while you're going and you guys can kind of pick your colors that way. So that way it's all streamlined. Same thing like this aquamarine. I don't know who the heck can read that, but it's on there if you want it. So you can pick different colors that way. The description box, I always do hygiene just to group all my hygiene notes together. So that way you can see right here, I have all my hygiene, my extractions, my exams, my crowns. If you were to put a special character in the description box. Like I have a hygiene child prophy right here and I have a period at the beginning. The reason I have a period at the beginning is because anything with a special character, whether it was a dash, a star, an exclamation point, whatever you want, it'll take that character and put it to the top. So if you guys wanted your hygiene notes to be, instead of alphabetical order down here, you wanted to have a period before all of your hygiene notes, so that way when you go to use these notes, you can see it at the top right here, or as soon as you click the blue auto note hyperlink, it's at the top here too. So that's another way to kind of move the notes around instead of being alphabetical if you have a more frequently used note than others. But if you only do it for a couple of notes, I would do it all, like all your hygiene notes at the top, or leave hygiene just H. And if you have this auto search box check marked and you type in H here, it'll bring you to your hygiene notes. So that's what I would do. I would just leave them grouped. You don't have to, but if you start naming notes, prophy, child prophy, adult prophy, scaling and route planning, those are all different letters to start. So of course, like my scaling is going to be down here, or like, oh, what did I name that? No, I can't find it. Then you're scrolling, that kind of defeats the purpose of making it simple and quick. So that's why I group them. But again, you guys can do it however you'd like to do it, but that's my recommendation. So to add a note into the computer, you choose your patient and you'd go from the clipboard down here, or front desk, or if you're just in the schedule, you can do it from note history from that icon. You can also get to notes from the account screen. So if you're in the account screen, I think it's this one, the little notepad right here, it all brings you to the same exact screen. So just a million different ways to get to it. If you know another way, I'm sure there's more ways than I'm telling you guys right now. But those are the ways that you can get to notes. To actually create the templates though, it's when you guys are working, instead of going into a patient and going into note history or from the chart and going to notes and then hitting the hyperlink and hitting new and then typing, because we're in a patient right now, it's better to just do it from the main screen while you're adding in all of your templates. So to add in your templates, I would do it from this front desk screen right here. And I would go to list. And you're going to go down to auto notes. Look familiar? It's the exact same screen, only you're not attached to a patient right now. So you can't use the note because we're not actually using it anywhere. We'll just have to hit new. Or you can edit an existing note. You can delete a note if you accidentally saved as an auto note for a patient, you can delete them. So we'll go to new, name it, choose your color, and then just start typing what you want your thing to be. So hygiene, you guys can all work together. Assistants and doctor, you can work together. Front desk, if you want any account notes or patient reminder notes or anything like that, you can have those notes in here. And then you can hit save and hit OK. Once I hit OK, it's down here at the bottom. You can see I make a lot of test notes. So some people, I don't know how much to throw at you, but I will go in here to this child prophy note and I'm going to edit it. I'm sure you guys have seen this little box over here. It's hard to miss. It's called Smart Note. What a Smart Note is it prompts you to fill out the note instead of having to type it. So you notice how I had plaque level, calc level, initials, all of these, brushing, anesthetic. So you can add what's called a Smart Note. So for plaque level, I think it comes with 4 of them. I think it comes with date, time, tooth, root, any of these that are in capitals, surface, are going to be with your system. These other ones I've actually added myself. So let's just add a Smart Note and I'll show you what it does. So if I hit new, add new Smart Note, this is what you'll have to do. For some reason, there's 3 names. So let's do plaque level. Let's do plaque. And I saw a chat come through. I'll look at it in 1 second. I can't. So I can do none. Hit add. I can do light, moderate, heavy. And I hit OK. I don't know why it won't let me. Oh, I already have a plaque. I won't spell it all out. Where'd it go? Okay, well, I already have one in there. So let's say I chose plaque level. If I move over that right here and I hit OK, when I go to use that child prophy note, the first thing it's going to make me do is choose the plaque level for that patient. So I can choose none and hit replace, hit OK. Then I didn't have to type that. So you can do that. So you can have it like prompt you through your notes if you'd like. And then at the end, you can fill out, you know, you're detailed about what you actually want to type in. So some offices love this feature, and for all of their notes, like they have like an anesthetic, then all of their anesthetic choices pop up and they pick which one they want to use. Then they have, you know, their filling material in there. And then, you know, it kind of prompts you through hygiene. Some people have plaque level, calc level, stain level, what x-rays you've taken for the day. And then instead of having to type it in, you're just clicking your way through the note, and then you can still type in when you're done. But I'm kind of getting into the advanced side of the notes, but I do like to point it out because it can walk you through your notes if you'd like. But it's more clicking. So, you know, some people like it, some people don't. You guys can play around with it to see if that's an option. And if you don't like that in your note, all you have to do is go in and edit it. And then you just delete anything with those little arrows is what's a smart note. So you just delete it. And then when you go to use that note again, it didn't make me prompt my way through anything. So I'm going to pause here because I see some chats coming through. And see if I can answer these. Okay. Yeah, if you guys have templates in your notes right now, you absolutely can copy and paste those templates in there for sure. So you can either type them in. If you have them saved, you can, yeah, absolutely. You can tweak them while you're working if you want to make any changes. So if you have it on a Microsoft document, you can do it the same way. I'm hoping you guys can still see my screen here. So when you go in to add your templates, let me go back to my Eaglesoft. So you just go to list, and then you go down to auto notes, and then you'd hit new. And then you would just, whatever Word document, let's see if I have one open. Yeah, I have one right here. So I can just copy your note, and then you can just paste it in here. So then you're not even typing anything. So absolutely, if you guys already have templates saved on your computer, for sure, copy and paste them. That'll save you a lot of time. And then once you're in there, you can be like, you know what, I don't like the way this one looked. Let's make any changes. And you can still change it in here. You can make this as exactly the same as what you guys have right now, or if you guys want to edit your notes that you currently have, for sure, do that. Perfect. Okay. Do we have any questions on the Smart Note or the how do you add in an auto template or how you actually use the notes? Do you want to see more about the Smart Notes, or do you guys just want to have them blank and like fill it in all by yourself right now? Or to modify a note on the same day, when you're in that note, you would just double click in the box of the note that you want to edit, and then you can keep typing. So you can keep editing the same note. So like, let's say you see a patient and then while doctor's doing the exam, you have time to fill out some of your note, but you didn't have time to finish it, or you didn't have time to add the proposed treatment. All you have to do is double click in there. And then just remember. So if I don't hit save right here, this is what it will look like. If I go to X out, save changes. Yes, save this note, no discard, cancel, return. So those are the 3 prompts that if you forget to hit save note, it'll ask you yes, save note, and then it will X out for you. So that's the screen that it looks like if you forget to save it. So pretty easy, just double click. I haven't ran end of day, so I can continue to edit these notes and it won't give me the line. But as soon as, like I said, as soon as you run end of day, that's where it gives you those little notes. Easy way to look at when a note hasn't been done that day. Other than really checking the note history, like by going like through, you know, Charles, hitting note, see did you do it for the day, there's not like a report that you can run to make sure that you finished your notes, if that makes sense. So it just kind of is on the hygienist or assistant to make sure, or doctor, whoever signs the notes when you're done. Let's say doc, you have your assistants do your notes for you. If you were to put in Chelsea's note, they can put in, you know, the auto note, crown, and then use it. So here's my smart note, it makes me pick a tooth. And then I can continue typing. If you have your assistant fill that in, if you just want to have, at the end of the day, just to review all of your notes, whoever's been doing them for you, if you just want to have an initial box in there and then you initial it to know that you've actually reviewed the note to make sure it has everything in there that you want, you can do that. Otherwise, whoever's logged in is going to be who the note's under. So that's the only thing is you can't have like multiple users. So you could have like a line for who your assistant was working with you for that day. And then you can initial it at the end, or however you guys are doing it currently. But Eaglesoft is, I don't know if you guys have one username that you guys are all in for your current system or if everyone logs in separately, but it does keep track. I guess this is like your audit trail of like whoever's doing the notes. So if Doc, you want to log in on every computer, you can do that. If you want your assistants to log in and then you just go in and initial the note at the end, that's fine too. But there's not a way to, other than going through patient by patient to see who did them. So it just kind of has to be on that, whoever saw that patient to make sure that the notes were done. But you'll know, I mean, I have a hygiene background, so you know, you go in to see your patient's notes from their previous visit and you're like, oh crap, I didn't do a note 6 months ago. It's easy to, you know, it's pretty easy to tell, but you know they're in because when you're in that chart, you can see that it's been walked out, prophy exam, bite wings, and you're like, oh crap, I forgot to do a note. You can go in and add a note and just say, you know, modifying note or old note, but there's not a way to run a report as far as I know. I'll double check, but I don't think there's a way. I'll get back to you, Jessica. Do notes. But I'm pretty sure you just have to check patient by patient. But I'll reach out to a couple other TAs and see if they know a better solution. Okay. How do we feel about notes? Adding templates in. Should be easy if you guys already have them in there, so that's nice. I know it's hard to do it until you're actually in there, but okay, let's see here. Perio chart is really easy, so let's go into Perio. If we do miss a note, it is pretty easy to modify the date and add in the sequence. Yeah, so there's 2 ways you can do it. You can, if you log off, see the date. You can change the date of when you logged in. So let's say you want to change it to 6 months prior. You can log into that date and put a note in as that day. But then just remember to log off and log back on for today's date for anything that you're doing today. So that's one way that you can backtrack a note if you want to do that. If you're editing an existing note, you can't log back into that day necessarily and make the changes. It'll still put the line through it. just because the end of day has been processed, but you can backtrack. So like that's one way you can, like this is what we'll have to do to enter any of your back data that you guys are going to have from when we do your last backup of your current software till when you get Eaglesoft dropped. I think it's only 2 days, but this is part of the process of backdating any data. So if you did want to log in again from like 6 months prior and add a note, that's one way to do it too. If you remembered everything you did, or if you just want like a bare minimum note, like Profi Bite Wings exam, no treatment needed, you can save it because you can't remember what you talked about. You can do it that way too. Okay, let's do perio charting because that's super easy and not overwhelming. And I'm being serious. So let's go into, we'll choose a patient. 2 ways to get to the perio icon. Number 1 is going to be this perio button, obviously. And number 2 is you can do it through the chart. So if you like to do everything out of the chart, you can. If you like to do everything from the schedule, you can as well. Over here in this little icon over here, the little drop-down arrow, it'll say perio. So if you click perio, it's going to bring you to the exact same screen as this perio button over here. So this is what it looks like. If you have exams in the computer already, there's 2 ways that you can have this open up. I have mine defaulted to open up from my previous exam, and then I just type over any changes that I want to make that day. At first, you guys are not going to have any perio exams for anyone, so they're all going to be blank. But once I do a perio exam for Tyler, so let's say, and if he had any missing teeth, they would show up in red. So that way, and it would automatically skip that tooth. So it's not going to make you perio chart a tooth that's not existing, right? So, which is nice. So let's just do this. So I'm going to hit save. If I X out of Tyler's exam and I go back into his exam, let's say it's 6 months later, or a year later, I'm going to perio chart. I have it pop up as the last exam that I did. And then I can just probe and spot check, look at my numbers that I have. And let's say this one went to a 2. If I just type over that and let's say, oops, he had a 4 today, 4 or higher goes in red for me to alert the pocket. And then I hit save. It's not going to delete that old exam. It's going to keep that exam. It just makes it easier for oh, good. That's how yours is set up. Perfect. It just makes it easier to perio chart without having to have a blank exam every single time. From a hygiene standpoint, I don't want to do that. I want to compare. The tab over says comparison. So obviously I just did 2 exams from today, so it's today's date. But let's say it was a different date that I had that in there. It still kept that old exam for you and it keeps track of it. So that way, that's people's worries are like, oh no, did it delete my old exam? No, it didn't. You can see that there's 2 colors on here now too. My 3 went to a 2, so it improved, so it's green. And anything 4 or higher is red on my chart, but you can obviously see that it changed right here as well on tooth number 5. So it does keep track of that for you. On the perio tab though, you can do a new exam. So if your patient, let's say in a couple years down the road, your patient hasn't had a perio chart in a while and the numbers are just a hot mess express, you don't want to type over all these numbers, it's too confusing, you can go to new exam. I don't know why mine's not working. Oh, because I'm already in a new exam. You can go to, sorry, bear with me here. You can clear all, and it's not going to actually delete that old exam. It'll keep it up there, but then you can have a blank exam for you if you'd like. So that way you can have those all on there without having to type over or get confused if it's like, a patient was healthy and all of a sudden they're extremely unhealthy, you can do it that way. There are ways to chart the bleeding. So you can see this bleeding icon. If you just click it once, and then you click the next area that you want to be bleeding, you can drive yourself crazy if you have a bunch of bleeding points. So there is an option to do bleeding all. And then you can just simply click the button again to take off if there's just a couple points that did not have any bleeding. Or if you accidentally hit all, you can hit the button next to it that says none. You can also, if you want to just do, the upper arch, you can, and then you want to point or chart your bleeding points, you can hit bleeding and then hit this lock button over here. And now I can just continue to chart my bleeding points because it's locked on the bleeding button. If you do not have it locked, then you have to toggle back and forth between hidden bleeding and the point, bleeding and the point, enough to drive you crazy. So I always say if you're going to chart all your bleeding points at once, make sure you lock it, okay? And to take it off, you just uncheck mark the lock. You know it's locked because it's highlighted in blue. I don't know if you can tell from your screen, but you can see my buttons that I'm using are this little blue color, and next to it, if I uncheck mark it, it turns back to that gray. You also have separation, so you can check mark those. Again, you can lock that, so if they have a lot, if you add bleeding with that, mine turns into this like brownish color. So you can see the 3 different colors that I have on my chart right now. I have both bleeding and separation highlighted, which is why it was making them all that maroon color. So I can just leave it on one or the other. So those are the 3 color options. Those are changed for you. You can change those under the File Preferences and Perio tab. So I'll cover that once we leave this Perio screen. So I'm on pocket depth right now. You can chart gingival margin by just toggling over here. So let's do a couple pockets. So I'm just going to do, oops. Let's go to pocket depth. And I'm just using the numbers on my keyboard. So you can just start typing. Okay. So there's my pocket depth. You can see the PD over at on the left-hand side. If I start charting gingival margin, and now I start typing, it's automatically going to calculate for me my clinical attachment level. So you don't have to worry about adding those up. So you can see that my pocket depth was 1. I had a little bit of recession of 1, and it made it so that total level is 2. Same thing with 4 and 4. So that's what that cal means. It automatically calculates the clinical attachment level for you. And then you can chart furcation grade. So if you're on a tooth with multiple roots, it'll let you do it. So if let's say there's 1, and I'm just using the numbers on my keyboard, you guys. But if you're on furcation grade, it does tell you 1 through 4. So if you try to chart like a 5, it's not going to let you because obviously that's not a thing, right? So it is smart enough to like not let you chart. You can use these numbers down here if you'd like. But now it's going into blue. If I try to chart a furcation grade on tooth number 8, it's a single root. So obviously it's not going to let me. It's going to gray that out for me. It's like, nope, that's not a thing. So you can't mischart that way. You can chart mobility, and it does give you a 0 through 4. So let's say this tooth's mobile. Where it's going to go is at the very top where it says MOB, and you can see the mobile up here. You can chart mucogingival junction, and it will go to the bottom. So those are all the options that you have for the perio chart. You can change the process over here on the right-hand side. So there are different ways if you guys want to change the process that you're perio charting. This is just the default option. It's pulling the default from the file preferences screen, which I'll show you. But if there's ever like a sub or someone in the office that doesn't want to chart that way, are stuck in their ways, they can change the process down here. So that's pretty much everything that has to do with the perio chart. You can save it. Again, you'll see the comparisons over here. The perio graph will give you the dots on like where the bleeding was, separation, where both was. It tells you if there's any improvements or where it got, where the alerts are right here. and you can have a comparison graph so you can see what's improved, what's not improved in that time period. You can always print off this comparison page right here by hitting print, and if the patient needs it or if you need to submit it to insurance for whatever reason, you can save it, you can quote unquote print it, but save it as a PDF. So that way you can submit that if insurance needs it for scaling and replaning. So that's why this perio graph on that chart preferences screen, remember when I said I didn't like to have my perio numbers on here? All of these lines and graphs and these dots would be on your chart. So that's why I said it gets a little bit overwhelming on the chart is if you check mark those. Personally, I don't like to have them on there, but if for whatever reason you guys wanted to see that on there, you could have this show on your actual chart, but I don't like to. So let's go to File Preferences, and we'll go to the Perio tab. And this is desktop specific. So user defined, this is the route that it's going to go automatically for that specific desktop. Like I said, on that Perio screen, you could choose the drop down there as well. This is desktop specific as well. Use previous Perio data when starting a new exam. I leave that check marked. If you have that check marked, that's going to bring up the old exam and you just type over it and hit save. If you were to print the perio chart, you can print it in color. If you want the patient alerts to pop up when you open up that perio chart, like you notice how Charles had, excessive bleeding, don't lean back all the way, all those patient alerts you can have show up in your chart when you open the perio chart. If you don't want those to show up when you open the perio chart, you can uncheck mark that. The alert depth, I have mine set to 4. That means anything 4 or higher on my perio chart is going to give me a red alert right here. So it's going to say, oh, that's a pocket to keep, to keep aware of. I have my bleeding as red. I have separation as yellow. Both is this brown color. If you just click on these boxes, you can change the colors if you'd like, but it does change it for everyone. Or no, it doesn't. It just changes it for that computer. I was wrong. The chart colors change for everyone. Perios for every desktop specific, but I would leave your guys' all the same in case you switch from op to op. So this is where I'd leave it, right here. And this is the default for you guys when you get Perio shoot, so you shouldn't have to make any changes. But if one computer got messed up or someone is playing around with it, that's how you'd make the change. File preferences Perio. But this should be your default. Easy enough with Perio. Do we have any questions? Okay. Let's take 5. Go to the bathroom, grab some water if you'd like. Meet back here at like 10:36. Or do you guys want to take 10? 5 or 10? Anyone care? 5 is good? Okay. Yeah, I figured that if we want to just take a little mental break for a second, run to the bathroom, I'm going to grab a water, and then we'll meet back here so then that way we can keep plugging along. No one wants to work super late. Oops, 10 for doctor. 10 for doctor. Okay. Let's meet back at 10:42. I'm going to mute the line here, but I'll be back in a few. I am back, so when everyone's ready, we can get started. I'll wait another minute. I know I said 10. All right. Yeah, I had to run downstairs. My boyfriend's trying to start getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner. So we've never had to do this. We've always had our parents cook, but we have to be on our own this year. So we're like, what do we do? Heard a bunch of racket downstairs. I was like, oh boy, I better go make sure he's all right. Okay. Looks like people are back. So we will get started. I did forget to show you on the perio chart how to chart a pocket over 10. Hopefully we don't have a whole lot of patients with pockets over 10, but it does happen. So if you're on a pocket and you have a pocket over 10, do you see this little 10 button right here down here in the lower right hand side? It has a 10 with an underlined 0. If I were to click that 10 button, it does look like 0, but if it has an underline and it's red, red is the first indicator to know that that pocket is not an actual 0. The underline means that it's a 10 or higher. If I needed an 11, I could just click the 1 after I hit the 10, and it's going to give me a 1 with an underline on it, and it's going to be red. So now I know it's an 11. If it was a 12, I could hit 12, oops, 10, and then the 2, and then it puts the underline. So you can see right here, the 2, that's a healthy 2 pocket number versus the 12 is going to be red with a 2 with an underline on it. So that's how you chart anything over a 10. So you just hit the 10 button and then add whatever number you need to make it the actual pocket depth of where you're at. Same thing if that needs to be a 10 for, whatever reason, 10 or higher, just hit the 10 and then add it down here or on the keyboard. So hopefully that makes sense. I wanted to make sure I covered how to chart a 10 because that is a common question. All right. Just going through here. When you do get your database, I know, Doc, you're going to be out on vacation, so we'll have to set up some security profiles for everyone. Typically, we set up security profiles for clinical staff versus the front desk, just between what you guys need to do. Front desk capabilities aren't really need to be done in the back unless you have employees that work, sometimes in the back and sometimes up front. So we can make sure we go through those security profiles. If you guys are trying to make notes and it's blocking you from doing it, then we'll have to just make sure that the security profile is set up properly, and we'll make sure that all gets taken care of for you while you get your data. But I do like to point that out. If there's ever a time where you can't do something in the software and it blocks you from doing it, it'll tell you there's a security preference issue, and you can either have doctor do it or whoever has the capabilities of doing it. So we'll walk through all those profiles. So it does vary. So sometimes people get blocked on being able to add notes. So we'll want to make sure that that's set up when you guys get your Eaglesoft data. All right, so I'm going to go into what's called memo. I know we touched over the memo yesterday briefly, but I do like to point out the memo box again now that we're talking clinical. It will just kind of have to be in the patient flow of remembering to put in memo notes for patients, because technically we all do it. I did it in the past as well. It's hard not to put in a patient note for someone like they were a PITA or going on vacation or this or that. That's technically not part of your clinical notes. So if you have a patient note and you want to remember that they're going on vacation, or you want to remember that they hate mint prophy paste, or whatever the thing is, you could do it as either a general note so you can see it, on the screen, but try not to keep like chart notes are supposed to be made for just those clinical chart notes. So if there's any like one-offs, like so-and-so is brothers with whoever, try to keep all of that information under this memo tab right here, this little memo icon. And if you, the difference between a memo is it doesn't appear anywhere. So if you ever, worst case scenario, got audited or patient wants their chart notes or whatever, anything you wouldn't want that patient to see would definitely go here. But even things like that, you wouldn't care if they would see, another office doesn't need to know that they are going to Jamaica for their honeymoon. You know what I mean? So just try to keep any notes like that under this memo icon. It doesn't pop up anywhere. It doesn't let you know that there is a memo. It just kind of has to become part of the patient flow from when you're going to review their chart or their perio chart or anything like that, just to kind of check and see. If you guys are all leaving memos, then it's a nice that you guys know that there should be a memo, but I know maybe one of you has seen John Smith since the last 15 years, you don't need to keep any notes on there, but let's say John accidentally, got scheduled on a day that you're sick and he had to see a different hygienist, it's just nice to have a couple little memos in about that patient so he or she feels like, you guys are all giving the same great care that you guys always give them. So I would recommend putting it in there as opposed to the actual notes for that patient. So that's where I would use that icon here. And let's see here. I'm just looking at my list to make sure we cover everything. I know we touched on, I don't think we touched on Task Manager yesterday. The Task Manager is a nice little icon over here. It looks like either a sticky note with sunglasses. I can't unsee that now that someone pointed that out to me, or a sticky note with a tack in it. This is used for creating a task for either yourself or for someone else. So instead of leaving like a sticky note or a chart on doctor's desk or little pieces of paper floating all around the office, and then you're like, crap, where was that little piece of paper that I had so-and-so's number on that I needed to check this or that? This little task manager is a way to keep track of all your tasks that you need to do or assign to someone else. So if you click on it, you can see since I'm logged in, it's automatically going to change to, who the tasks are for. And mine's blank because I don't have any tasks right now. If I go down to new, I can have a subject line. So let's say Doc's gone on vacation, but we saw patients of record and Charles got some bite wings that I need her to review when she gets back in the office. I can say review bite wings. The due date is the due date that you want her to see that memo or the task pop across her desk or when she logs in. So you can make it for that day. It'll just say that it's old, or if you know she's gone until the 1st, you can have it assigned to the 1st of the month or whatever day you want to pick. You can choose it for a patient. So if you click this little person with an arrow, like a backwards arrow, that will always bring up the last patient that you use. So I don't know if you guys have seen me click that button in previous screens, but I just get in the habit of doing it. So if you're working with Tyler and then you needed to do this and do that, whoever you had up last, it will populate that patient. You can also type in the box, start typing like the name and hit tab. That'll pop up anyone's name that starts with those 3 letters. So again, you can just type in that text box to find patients if you know their letters, and you can hit use in the lower right-hand corner. Or you can click this blue hyperlink where it says patient, and it will bring up the entire list of patients, and you can start searching for them that way as well. So 3 ways to bring up a patient in any screen like this. So let's just use my good old friend Charles Abbott. And you can choose the category. So these are the categories that are already in here right now. If you don't see a category that you want to use, so let's say I want to have just a review bite wings category, again, it's blue. It's a blue hyperlink, so I can click on that. I can hit new, and I can say review bite wings because, let's say anytime she's on vacation, I want to use this one. So I'm going to hit OK. So now I have a new category to use, so I can use it. Or you can just pick it if there's already one in there. Who it's assigned to. If you forget to change the name of who it's for in that first screen, you can just assign it to someone. So let me just find a doctor on here. George Young. Priority status if you want to. You can make this private, so that way if you check mark this box to be private, that means only George Young can see this task for him. If you don't check mark this private, anyone that goes to so over here at the top, it says for Bonnie Biggs, there's a drop down that says view all tasks, and then anyone would be able to see the tasks that you assigned for doctor. So if you don't want someone to see the tasks that you're assigning them, you can make it private. The status would be not started because they haven't done it yet. You can create a frequency if you'd like. So let's say every month, whoever's in charge of running end of month to close out the books for the month, you can set a recurring task to be monthly. If you want to make sure that you're running your end of year and you just want it to be annually, you can change it to make sure reminder to run end of year this month. You know, you can set it to a date for yearly. Let's say someone's in charge of taking out the trash every week. You can set up a weekly occurrence to remind yourself weekly to do this, you know, or just daily if you want it. You don't have to pick a frequency, but if there's something that's reoccurring every month, week, day that you need to remember to do, you can set a frequency by hitting set frequency. So once I create this task, I hit OK. I forgot what date I picked for that. Show future tasks. Oh, duh. Bear with me, guys. Day before vacation. So since I'm under 4, I chose it for George Young. So then I could go to George Young's for him. There's my task that I created. Sorry. So since I didn't make it for myself, I made it for George. It's under George's, which makes most sense, right? So this is where if you had a bunch of tasks and you can go to all tasks, so you can see that I have a bunch of different tasks in here. If you didn't want someone to be able to see, you know, review these bite wings or whatever, if it's a private matter, then if it was marked private, then this would not appear for Bonnie because it, you know, they don't want everyone to see it. So that's how you can go to all tasks, or you can filter by provider of who you've assigned things for, and then they're on there. So when you first log in, if you have a task, it'll tell you on a login screen. So let me create a task for myself and I'll log in and log back off. Task due date today. I'll just do the last patient. Category. This is just fake, right? So I'm gonna hit OK. When I log in for the day, it should have told me that I had a task. Well, a pop-up should have happened that said I have a task. Of course, it's not going to work right now. All right, let's see. I don't know why this didn't pop up. Well, typically, I'll try it again in a minute. When you first log in, it should say there's a task for you. Do you want to go to it? And then you'd hit view, and then it would bring me to this screen right here. So since it's not working, I apologize. And then I can see that I have a task. So to go in and see what it is, I just simply highlight the task, I hit edit, and then I can see what I need to do. And then I can go into, you know, let's say I needed to go into Charles's images. I can go into his images from here. I can take a look at his notes. I can take a look at his treatment plan. So I can see, I can toggle. This is the exact same toolbar as with the toolbars that are up here. So you can do it from here, or if you want to do it from that main screen or from the chart, any way that you want to do it, you could do it. Once it's been completed, There's a status bar right here, so you can say in progress, that you're working on it, you're waiting for someone else, or once it's been completed, if you choose completed, it will take it off your task list and then you won't have to see it anymore. So then it would clear out of here if I were to have chose completed. So throughout the day, or maybe, once a day, first thing in the morning before you leave for the day, just take a look at your task manager to see if that's something that you guys are going to be utilizing, or just good reminders for yourself, like run a pre-D for so-and-so, or, check remaining insurance benefits, or, whatever kind of task you want, whether it's for someone else or for yourself, it's just helpful little reminders. So whenever you click on that, it will appear for what you have. So make sure it's on your name. Or if you want to look at other people's, you can do that. I've seen some people, like every Monday they say like, have a great week. They're just being like a little nice. You can have like little notes for other people too, if you want to do it that way. So that's the task manager. It kind of helps eliminate some paper in the office but it only tells you have a task, even though mine didn't do it just now, when you first log in for the day. So anytime, like if someone were to give you a task, at noon, if you didn't log off and log back in, it's not going to tell you have a task. You just have to make sure you're checking the little icon to see if someone put something in. So it's nice to check first thing in the morning, and then possibly before you leave. I would check it, a couple times a week if you guys decide to start using the task manager. Office preference, some people do, some people don't. So of course, I'm throwing a lot at you to start. What you guys, if you want to just slowly start implementing using the software to begin with, and then the more you guys get comfortable with it, the more you can add on to your tasks. I don't want you to feel, too overwhelmed from the get-go. So let's see here. Let's go over, well, do you guys do labs at all? Yeah,
Yes.
the task manager for x-rays is like the most common one. Okay, you do use the lab? All right, perfect. So let's go over lab tracking. This is super helpful too, to make sure you're not running around looking for the lab slip, asking 600 people like, hey, has this lab came back in yet? Do we know? Should we schedule the patient? This is just an area that everyone can go to from their computer. It updates as you create lab cases to know what's in, what's not. So I got to the screen by clicking lab tracking. And I'm just going to make it big so you guys can see the whole thing. Down here at the bottom, as new, edit, delete, close, and you can see these 4 different colors down here. Navy, navy is going to be the cases that are closed. So you can see that I have these closed ones right here. Returned is going to be green. So green is good. It means you can schedule the patient. It's back in the office. Overdue is red. So you put in a date of when you anticipated that lab case coming in, and it's not here yet. It's late. It's time to contact the lab. Hey, where's my crown? Black is pending. Black means that it's in the time frame that you specified for the time frame that you sent it out to. So let's go over this. There's boxes up here at the top. You can auto search. You can include closed cases. I usually uncheck mark that because once it's been closed means delivered to the patient. So I don't need to see what's already been delivered unless I want to go back in and say, Oliver called about his crown, whatever. When did we actually get that case back? You can kind of, it just keeps a history for you of all the cases. But once you start utilizing this a lot and you have a lot of closed ones in there, it's harder to tell what's late, what's here, and what's still pending. So I usually leave the closed cases uncheck marked. Returned cases would be the ones that are, of course, here. So you can uncheck mark if you just want to see the overdue ones. But I like to see what's ready to be scheduled. So let's go ahead and add one. So this is for all my patients. So since that was not highlighted on a patient's name and I just hit lab tracking, that's going to bring up all of my cases. But if I was on a patient and I hit lab tracking, I could see just cases for Tyler. So you can see his name right here on the toolbar or on the little eye bar up here at the top. So if you're like, what the heck, where are all my lab cases? If you're on a patient, that's why, if they don't have any specific. So just simply click off of the patient and hit lab tracking, and that's going to bring up all of your lab cases. So to add a new lab case in, you're going to hit this new button right here. This is how you can attach it to a patient. So if you, again, you can hit the last patient that you used, hit the blue hyperlink to get your full patient list, or you can start typing the first few letters of the patient and hit tab, and it will bring up anyone's name that is within those parameters. So we can choose a patient. Let's use Angela. The provider, you can have it just set to doc if you guys want, or you can say whoever sent it out, whoever's in charge. The laboratory, you guys won't have any labs in here to start. So what you can do is you can hit this blue hyperlink over here at the left-hand side, and you can hit new, and you can just start adding in your labs. So test lab. If you want, you can put in their address, you can put in their, you can put in all of the information that you want. If you know it's Jim, and you have Jim's phone number, you can do that. If you know like how long, like let's say Jim always gets labs back in 8 days. That's sweet, right? So you can hit OK. So now you can add in the different labs. So to start, you guys will probably have to, be adding in your labs just one time. It's not every computer, just one time. As soon as you add that lab in there, you can start using it. So I can hit use. So once they're in there, you can just drop down and choose which lab you want to use. It will automatically populate Jim's name if you put that in there. These are your lab case types. Some lab cases are actually in here, but again, anything that's blue and a hyperlink, you can add in there. So I can see over here you guys have Vivo's cases, so you could do new. I don't know if that's a lab or whatever that is, but you can hit OK, and then I can use it. Date open is always going to be the day that you sent it off to the lab. What day you want to start tracking from when it's been gone. You can have an invoice number if they give it to you. If it's a crown, you can always put in the shade if you'd like. It's going to gray out this date returned while you're creating the lab case because it's assuming that you're not sending out a lab and getting it in the same day. The due date is when you expect that lab to come back. So it populates a calendar for you. So we're on, today is the 25th, so typically it's 2 weeks. So the 9th is when I anticipate this lab case to be back. If I want to put in a description, I can type in whatever I want right here. There is an option to add an auto note. So if you have auto notes, look at, here's all my auto notes. Again, I can hit new at the bottom if I want to have a lab case auto note. The only one reading this is you, so typically this is enough information up here at the top to where you know, but if it's like a one-off situation or a weird case or you guys want to leave a note about that, maybe you want to be like, Angela prefers AM appointment. When that lab case comes in, if you have a morning appointment, you can see that she prefers a morning appointment. You can add it right here to your task manager, what we just covered, that little sticky note. If you want, that'll just add a task for you. So then now you are already put in that lab case. You can choose a tooth. If it's a crown or if you need to choose a tooth. You can choose upper, lower. You can clear it with this clear button, upper right, upper left, lower right, lower left. So you can get as creative as you'd like. You can hit OK. Now you can see that my Angela Abbott lab case is in black. If I uncheck mark the closed. So now you can see she's in this little black purgatory because she is in the pending status. She's still in that time frame of when I expect that lab to come in. Let's say Angela's lab comes back in. All I have to do is click it, hit edit, and date returned right here. This middle box is now allowing me to pick a date. So let's say it came back today. I can hit OK. And now she's green. She's ready to be scheduled. Once we deliver Angela's lab, we can just go in, hit edit. Right here, It won't let me highlight it, but it says close this lab case. As soon as I check mark that little box right here, I hit OK. You can see it disappeared from my list. I do not have include closed cases check marked. If I were to check mark it, I could see the lab cases right here. So 3 steps to keep track. Let's say these are late. You're like, where is Robin's case? You can edit it. And you can just get right to the lab right here. And you can see who you need to call, you know, the phone number would be populated right here. So it's great to, you know, be able to quickly access all of your lab case information from whatever computer you're on. So super helpful. Definitely avoids the running around and asking people, has this been returned yet? So, all right, any questions on the lab case? The nice thing with Eaglesoft, it is pretty intuitive. So once you start digging around and clicking around, I mean, it's really hard to, you really can't mess it up, if that makes you guys feel better. You know, it's pretty self-explanatory. So like if you get into the lab case, I mean, you can obviously say new, edit, or delete, you know, so it is nice that you can, you know, kind of maneuver around the software and it pretty much tells you what you need to do. So I wouldn't delete lab cases in here. Some people are like, oh, well, once I get it returned, I like to delete them. It's just deleting history. So it is nice just to keep them in here, but just simply unchecking mark that box right there. Just click around and you can keep the history on there. I'm not afraid to just start clicking to find what I need. Yeah, that's the thing. I always tell people you can't mess it up. You know, whatever you do, you pretty much can undo. So don't be nervous about, you know, trying new icons or hitting something new. You can usually undo. I say usually, unless you get too crazy in there, which would be really hard to do. You really can't mess it up. So I like to give you guys that reassurance in there. Okay, lab tracking, done. Easy peasy. Perio, done, easy. Patient notes, the hardest part is going to be, not the hardest part, the longest process will just be getting your notes into the system already. So since you already have them on, I'm guessing it's a Microsoft doc, all you have to do is copy and paste, pick your colors. The color battle is where everyone always has a different opinion. So figure that one out amongst yourselves. So that way you guys can figure out that. And let's see here. Notes, we talked about smart notes, but we'll cover all this again too once you guys start diving into the software and actually get yours delivered. Medical history, I know we touched on it a little bit yesterday, so I'll just kind of refresh here. To get to the medical history, if you're highlighted on a patient, you can just hit medical history. I will need to be reminded, are you guys using, I know you guys have your forms, so in theory, it should update for you guys with the weave option that you guys have. So when you go to review it, you can just hit Charles and click the medical history, and it should populate these answers for you based on what Jessica said from the weave portion. So this should already be filled out for you because the patient, in theory, hopefully fills these out prior to their visit. If they didn't and you just simply go over the medical history with them in the chair, that's fine too. There is buttons over here where it says no to all. So instead of having to click no and no and no and yes, if there's just 1 or 2 yeses, that's a terrible one to pick yes on. Sorry about that. You can hit no to all and it will fill in all of these icons for you. And then they could just say, oh, I do have high cholesterol. And then you could just simply click yes. So that's a little bit faster than having to actually click, 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 click every single time. If you have to fill that medical history out on behalf of the patient. Anything that is a yes will translate into a patient medical history alert. So you can see that yellow box that keeps popping up for Charles. Anything that's yes will automatically be added to an alert for that patient. So when you're in the chart screen or you're in the perio screen, anything that you'd need to know a medical history for would populate for you. So you don't have to add that in yourself. The medical history form is customizable. So if you're like, I mean, there's some weird choices on here, like frequent diarrhea. Do you really need to know that about a patient? Probably not. And are they going to tell you the truth on that one? I doubt it. You know, I wouldn't be admitting that to someone, like, for real. So you can, sorry, not sure you said those questions above. Yes, they are customizable. So how you customize the form, I would just do it once a year. I wouldn't update it a million times, because what happens is, let's go into it. So we're going to go to list, and we're going to go to medical history forms. Eaglesoft medical history is the active form, and you guys aren't going to have these other ones. These are ones that I've created. So it's going to be your default form. Your default form is obviously going to be the form that you use for your patients that you're going to be sending out. That software, that third-party software that you're using for forms, is going to be pulling from this, the active and default form. So if you have 4 of these forms, so you can have a child form be active. It'll pull, I think that's what RevenueWell does in Solution Reach and Opera. So my guess would be that it is pulling these forms from here too, because it has to get it from somewhere. That Weave does. So check mark if you have a form that you don't ever use, just uncheck mark it, and then it won't pull into your third-party software. But when you go in to edit it, see down here at the bottom, you guys are only going to have the Eaglesoft medical history, that top one. The reason these other ones populate is when you go to hit edit, it's going to say you can't edit the default form. Would you like to copy this form instead? Yes. You can't change the original Eaglesoft form, but it literally copies the exact same form and makes it customizable for you. So you hit yes. And then it's going to bring us into the medical history form to change. So over here on the right-hand side, you can see these little X's. If you didn't like one of these questions, you can just simply click X and it takes it off for you. But if you have a question that you want to change it, I recommend, instead of Xing out and then adding a single question over here at the left-hand side, I would just type over. Let's say, are you on a special diet? Like, let's say you can say, yeah, whatever question you want, you can just type over it. So then that way you're not having to X out and then dragging over another question. Does that make sense? So if you just want to replace a question, you can. If you don't have a question that you want to replace it with, you can just simply hit this X box. And then you can add a question down here. Down here at the bottom is going to be all of those. Sorry guys, this text box is in my way. There we go. I couldn't see my scroll bar. This is the section title. So you can X out of these weird questions, like if you don't care about the frequent diarrhea, or kidney problems, or any of these questions that you don't care about anymore. And you can either, one, hit the red X to remove it, or if you have a different area that you'd like them to fill out instead, again, you can just retype over the answer that you have in there, so then you're not having to worry about adding. But some people really clean this list up. They're like, I don't really want all of us in here. Just go ahead and get crazy with it. X out, add what you want, and then you can make it your own customizable. How you rename it is up here at the top. I'm highlighting the form name. So you can just say, I would always say medical history, and then 2020. I would date it, because then if you edit it again in 2021, then you know which form that you're changing, and then you know when the last time it's been edited. So I like to date a lot of things, just because that's the only way that you can really tell when the last time that you felt that you'd made changes to this form. Now, the reason I said I would only edit it one time a year is because whatever form you're using and you make your default form, it's going to clear out, it's not going to remove the medical history from that patient totally, but when they go in to fill out that medical history form, again, it's going to be blank. So you could see the history of the form, but whatever the default form is going to be, so let's say we were using this one for the first month as the default form. So right here, this box is going to pop up. It's currently marked. By checking this, you're making this the default form instead. Do you wish to continue? Yes. As soon as I make that change, whatever answers I had on this form will still be there for this form, but this is now my active form. So now when I go in to use that patient's medical history, this is the medical history form that's pulling up, not the old form that you were using. So if you're making changes once a month to that form, then it's going to continue to wipe out their answers and like re-change that default form. So I would just do it once a year, or just like bare minimum amount of time so that patient isn't having to like refill out that form every single time, if that makes sense. It's going to clear out the old form and make the new form default. So try to limit the amount of times you make changes. I know it's kind of confusing. I don't know why it does that, but just there's your warning. So when you first get in, make all the changes you'd like. You can print out a blank form. So if you guys want to print it out, you can You can either go into a patient and hit print blank form at the bottom, or you can print this form out here and write all over it and say what changes you want to make. Then when you go in to edit it, it's really quick, and then you can see what it looks like. So you can preview it down here in the lower right hand side. I hit preview, and you can see what the form looks like as you work on it. And down here at the bottom it says print blank form. So then if you print this blank form, it won't have any patient's name, birth date, or date created at the top. It'll all be blank for you. So you can start Xing out of whatever you want. Then you know what to look for on the form to clear out, and it just makes it a little bit easier to edit, in my opinion. Okay. So your form should be coming in from your third-party e-services, so that should update for you within the patient, but that's how you would edit the form that that Weave is using if you want to use the Eaglesoft medical history. So that's how you'd edit this form. You cannot edit the Eaglesoft medical history form in Weave, if that makes sense. Like you can access it, you can view it, and you can send it to your patients, but you cannot actually physically edit this Eaglesoft medical history form in Weave. You have to do it through Eaglesoft. So you do it the list and then go down to medical history and edit it here. They can fill it out, it can write back and forth, but you can't make any physical changes to that form. Does that make sense? That's because it's pulling from Eaglesoft. You'll be able to edit and customize the other forms that you make within that form, but you can't change Eaglesoft's form in Weave. You have to change Eaglesoft's form in Eaglesoft. But when a patient fills it out and you go to this medical history box and you go to review it, you can still make changes in it. That's fine. So even if they put no for all of these and then they start talking and they're like, oh yeah, I had surgery last month. You're like, what? You can still click on the medical history and you can make the changes for that patient if you'd like, just by clicking the medical history box. A copy of that medical history form or any forms that they fill out are going to go into, I think my computer's freezing. Let's see. Okay. So any forms that patient is filling out from Weave and they say it integrates into Eaglesoft, it's going to go into SmartDoc. So it's this little piece of paper with the purple dot. I think it's a brain. It's too small for me to really be able to see. So if I click on the SmartDoc icon over here, any form that has been synced into Eaglesoft from Weave will appear over here. So you can say, like, let's say they filled out this patient analysis, or they filled out a treatment form, or their medical history, a copy of that medical history form will sync over into the SmartDoc right here. So you can access all of their forms from SmartDoc. Same thing if you're getting rid of paper charts and you want to scan in papers, anything from that chart into that patient that you still want to see without having to go down into the file room and dig through to find that paper, you can scan it into the SmartDoc. The SmartDoc is essentially the virtual chart within Eaglesoft for you. So if patients bring you a med history list, you can scan in the med history list. If they have a referral form that you want to keep in there, you can put a referral form in here. Any form that they're signing on that Weave website will populate into the SmartDoc. So the SmartDoc is a great resource for you to click on through and see all of their forms. It'll put the most recent forms at the top. You'll see that it says recent documents. So you can just click through here. It's all PDF. If you go down to documents by group, you can actually keep group documents. So like, let's say you have, if you want to create a folder for informed consents, you want a form for their HIPAA or a folder for their HIPAA, you want a folder for their medical history. So you can keep track of different folders if you'd like. It's just kind of for like long-term goals of being a little bit like more organized. You can pick different folders to put it in, but as recent documents populate a scroll bar, if I had a bunch of more documents in here, I would have a scroll bar with an arrow to go up and down. So I could still sort through these. It's just a little bit easier to find what you're looking for in the documents by group if you know what folder you would have put it in. So like I said, I'll always sync over into the recent docs, but you can organize it by going to documents by group. So SmartDoc will be front desk's best friend, and it will also be for clinical staff if you want to double check to make sure that they have consent forms signed. Oh, excuse me, or whatever forms that you have them fill out prior to their appointments will all be in SmartDoc. So whoever's, screening the patients for COVID, if they're doing like a COVID screening form virtually, you can have it sync into the SmartDoc. And then before you grab your patient, you can just be like, did Charles fill out those forms? And you can just take a quick glance to see what he had going on. So just another area to keep all of your items for that particular patient. There is a SmartDoc folder for the office. So if you guys want to keep a copy of everyone's license in Eaglesoft, your hygiene license or your assistant license, or a doc, if you want a copy of your license in there, you can have you guys do have a practice SmartDoc. How you would get to that is list and then practice information. And down here in the lower left-hand corner is a SmartDoc. So you can have like your end of months populate into the SmartDoc folder, or your end of year populate into there. You can have, like I said, licenses in there. Whatever particular information you want to keep for the practice, you can have under list practice information and scan it into the practice SmartDoc. So you can have it for your practice as well. All right, any questions on SmartDoc?
No.
Okay. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, let's move on to images. And Tom is going to be coming into your office on the January 4 once you get Eaglesoft installed, and he'll run around and make sure all of the sensors are installed on the computers for you. So that way you don't have to do it. How you get to images is going to be this view images icon from the schedule, or on the clinical screen. You can get to it from the digital x-ray. You can click video images. If you guys have intraoral cameras as well, Tom can make sure the drivers are set up for those intraoral cameras. And then when you click this video images, or this little, what is a picture of an intraoral camera, it will bring you to taking a picture for your intraoral camera. So do you guys have those in the practice? Yes, okay. So Tom can set that up too. So that way you can toggle back and forth from either this screen or you can do it from the schedule. So I like to point out both ways. If you end up on the screen and you're like, how do I get back to that front desk screen? This practice management button or where it says front office, if you click on that, that'll always bring you back to the front screen. So don't worry if you accidentally get over here and you're like, what did I do? You can either go back to the schedule or you can click front office and it will bring you to the front office as well. So that's how you get out of that screen if you accidentally click it and you don't want to be in there. So if I'm not clicked on a patient and I hit view images, it's going to bring up my patient list. If again, I'm highlighted on a patient and I click view images, it's going to bring me to that particular patient's images. So once I hit view images, all of the images that I have for Charles will be over here. So let's say I took a bite wing. You can see that bite wing over here. You can see video capture. So this would be any intraoral photos for Charles. These are all fake, you guys. So I'm not breaking any rules here. Actually, this was my bite wing. Someone took one on me, but these are fake people. So some of these images are going to look a little bit more. They're going to look a little bit different because they're simulated. So your images will look a little bit more clear. So they might look a little blurry on here, but with your sensors, it'll look different. So all your exams will be over here. It does go in by date. How you would do a new exam, how you would take a new bite wings or a new PA or a new pan. You would click on your patient, you'd hit view images. And you're going to go down here to new exams. See this little gray bar under this blue box on the left-hand side? It says new exams. These are all the templates that I have put into my system. You can see that there's a bunch of them. You can delete them. There are standard templates that come with Eaglesoft. So you guys had, was it Gendex sensors? I think it was Gendex. Yes, okay. So they'll populate sensor. So you can see there's 4 sensors. I think mine said Schick. Oh no, I renamed them. But there'll be a sensor template for you. So you just pick which template you want. So 4 bite wings. And you can see as I click through here, there's a 1, 2, 4, and then 3. Or if I click this one, mine goes 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is just the order of the image that it's having you take. So you can have a bunch of different bite wing templates set up depending on how your assistants or your hygienists like to take FMXs, how they like to take bite wings, how you guys like to do things. But with the sensor ones, they have it typically, I changed this one around a little bit, but I think they have it typically go 1, 2, and then 3 is where my 4 is, and then 3, and then 4. But it all depends on like which way you want to take the images, and we can set up templates so that way when you do it, you're not having to change up the order that you normally take your images. You can have multiple templates in there, or if you guys all take them the same way, delete any of the templates that you guys wouldn't use. So we can clean that up for you. Mine is going to be red right now because I don't have any sensors connected to my computer. If I were to have my Schick sensor plugged in or my Gendex sensor or whatever plugged in, I could plug it in and then this box is going to be blinking yellow. Once it's red means nope, you can't take an image because there's like nothing to take an image of, right? I don't have anything plugged in. But as soon as it starts reading that driver that sensor is ready to go, it's going to blink yellow. And you can hit acquire. It's not going to let me do it because for obvious reasons, as I've said. But once you hit acquire right here in this toolbar, it's going to blink yellow. You can take your image. As soon as the image appears, it'll populate to box number 2. And you can just keep going and going. If you pick the wrong template, or let's say number 1 image was, I'm going to go into an actual one that I've taken. You can move the images, like let's say this one, what you want this one to be over here. If you just drag them, if I hold down the box and I drag the images, I can move the order of where they are. So if I accidentally, if accidentally for some reason somehow took x-rays in this order, I can rearrange them by just simply dragging and dropping. These arrows pop up to see the red and blue arrows, so you can just drag it to the area that you want it to be in. So it's not the end of the world if you take the x-rays in the wrong order. You can also right click on the image and you can rotate it. You can view full screen, you can view original. So those are going to be the most common ones. Sometimes people, I don't know how it happens if your template was set up wrong or you use the wrong template. Like let's say you use a ScanX template instead of the sensor template and your bite wing's upside down like this. It's not stuck like that. If you just right click and hit 180, it'll flip the image back to where it needs to be. And then you can save it. So if I were to make any, changes to this, I can hit save in the right hand or in the upper left hand corner. Again, if I were to X out of the screen, it will ask me if I've made any changes, if I want to save those changes. Once I'm on an x-ray though, let's say I take all my x-rays, I like them, they're good to go. You can use these different icons up here in the toolbar. I would just stick to these ones. You can get really crazy in here. You can like colorize it. I wouldn't do that. That changes the colors to like these neon colors, and invert it's going to change it to like, instead of being black in the background, it's going to be white. So it's going to, and then make the teeth dark. So you can change it if you'd like. The main tools I always like to point out is going to be this brighten and contrast. If you hit that little one, it's like a sun and a moon. And then you can see that it's like this little sun and moon on my keyboard. I'm just holding down my mouse and I'm dragging my mouse back and forth. So you can make the image darker. If you're really trying to see, you can lighten up the image. If you put too much exposure on there, you need to lighten it. You can lighten it up as much as you want. So I'm just dragging and holding my mouse down to change the imaging that way. So you can see better if you want to do that one. And then if you're on this one, I also like to point out the eagle eye. The eagle eye means you can kind of zooms in on the image for you. So if you're trying to look interproximal and you're trying to see, again, these are fake pictures, they're simulated, so it's not going to show me that good of a, eagle eye thing here. But with some of the sensors, you can really see really great between those contacts with this eagle eye. You can zoom, so if there's a certain area that you just really want to zoom in on and then use the eagle eye, you can really get on in there and see between those contacts to see if there's anything that you want. Again, I just hit the zoom feature. If you right click and left click back and forth between right clicking and left clicking, it'll zoom in and zoom out for you. If you actually make some changes that you don't want, you can click this original button up at the top and it will bring you back to the original of how you took the photo. So if you started messing around with it and you're like, uh-oh, you can just hit original and it brings you back to where you were at the beginning. So you can zoom in. I clicked this like enlighten area and it will just, and then you highlight what you want. You can hit original and it brings you back. So those are the features I like to point out. If you're on something like right now, I keep clicking in the zooming button. I'm like, what the heck? I want to get out of the screen here. This selector will bring you back to your mouse. So just hit selector. If you're on the eagle eye and you're like, I don't want this, I want to go back, the selector gives you your mouse back so you can stop making changes to it. Do you do any root canals where you'd need to be measuring? No? Okay. There is a measure feature if you needed it, but if you're not doing any of that, you don't have to. So you can just ignore that then. So you can save. So the process of taking an x-ray, let's walk from the beginning. Charles is in the office. He needs x-rays. I'm going to click his name. I'm going to go to view images. I'm going to go down to new exam because I'm taking a new exam. I'm going to pick the template that I would like. It gives me my template. I'm going to hit acquire. It's not going to let me, of course. As soon as it's blinking yellow, I can start taking my images. It gives me my two options, or I take my two x-rays. Let's say I want to retake an image. So let's say I have an image number 1, my bite wing wasn't that great. I have some overlap, I need to retake it. I just highlight the box that I want to retake the image on, hit acquire, and take a new photo. Once I take the new photo, both pictures will show up. I can't take an image right now. I obviously don't have a radiograph in here, but both pictures would show up and it will say retake an original image. I just double click the image that I want to keep. So if I liked my original image better, my retake was worse, I could just double click the original image and it will keep the original one. If I want the new one, I just double click the new image. But that's how you would retake a photo. If you wanted to, let's see here. If you want to import a photo, you can import a photo. You would just choose your template. Like let's say, you know, you have a patient photo that you want to upload. You take it with the camera and you have it on your desktop. You would just choose patient photo for your template. Now I would go over to File and then Import. And I can import any picture that I have, you know, you should see this. I have these little babies with teeth. I don't know if you guys have seen these on Google. They're really creepy. But someone photoshopped baby teeth on all these newborn baby photos. So don't ask me why I have that on my computer. But so you can choose the patient photo and now you have that patient photo for them. Or let's say you have intraoral photos that are sent over from another practice, or bite wings, same thing, another practice sent you over a pan. Let's say they, you know, the referring dentist sent you over a pan. You could just go to import. You just choose your pan, and then you go to File, Import, and choose whatever photo you have saved to the desktop, and then you can import it in that way. So that's how you'd import old X-ray exams if you need to, or new ones from another practice. Any questions on imaging?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it's super nice. So any image, what we'll do is we'll double check your templates. If you notice when I click my bite wings, I'm highlighted on this, on number 1. It highlights the teeth. I'm going to move this little box over here. It highlights the teeth of what I'm supposed to be taking. This is what it's reading from on the chart when you click on those teeth. So if I were to click tooth number 3 on my chart, that's how it reads back and forth. This is how the two systems talk. So over here, this is how I know it's 12, 13, 14, 20, 21, and 19. So I can do that. If you ever see any images, like let's say this checkup right here, notice I don't have any teeth highlighted with this template. I can say which teeth I want to take pictures of. So probably not 5. And then you can do 8, 9, and 10. And once you highlight these, it stays like that forever. So it updates the whole template. So if you decide to create a new template and you're like, why isn't it updating my images over there on my tooth chart? It's probably because there's no teeth highlighted over here. So you just have to simply click over here and just see. And that's nice too, as you're taking your photos and you're moving along the mouth, you're like, where am I supposed to be right now? Well, it'll show you where you're at too. So you can highlight. So I created a checkup because some offices do these. So then you just highlight the teeth that you want. So you can see that it stays like that. And anytime I go to do that template, it'll stay. So you might have to do that and highlight the teeth if you create a new template, but it's really easy. All you do is click. All right, so that's imaging in a nutshell. So like I said, all your dates. So if you import any photos over here, like let's say you import a photo from another office, it is going to put in the date over here on the left-hand side, like you can see other image, and it dates for today's date. You can't backdate it, so you can just right click and hit rename, and you could say, let's say this is from 2020. Patient photo from October from another practice. It's always going to put today's date of the date that the images are taking. For legality reasons, it does not let you change the dates because then people could be changing the dates for x-rays. You know, someone somewhere along the lines was changing the dates on x-rays, wasn't okay. So Eaglesoft is like, nope, we're stopping that. You can just right click and rename the exam. So if it's photos from the endo office or referral from this or a pan from this date, you can just put the date in the rename box. It will never let you change the date over here though. But that's how I recommend the workaround for putting the date of when you received the images. So I like to point that out. Yeah, it is nice. It is nice to have everything integrated in one. So you can see from the chart, of course, everything that you have from that patient. So you can see their photo, the x-rays, intraoral photos, highlight a tooth, and just navigate your way around. I did not point out, and I forgot to in the chart, if you just want to see a summary of one specific tooth, you can either sort it by highlighting the tooth over here and it puts all the teeth numbers together of what you had done. Like all my 32s are together, now my 31s. You can do it by surface, you can do it by status, you can do it by the date. It automatically defaults to the date. But if you just want to see the history of one tooth, if you highlight the tooth and you right click and hit history, that's going to give me the history of that tooth. So it's going to tell me I did a perio exam, I did when I did a composite. So obviously I've done a lot of perio charts for this tooth, but it does give you at a quick glance what was done. So you can see this resin composite, the surface over here was an occlusal. If I look at the chart, you can see that there was an existing restoration done that I charted on July 2019 for that specific tooth. So it's a nice way just to kind of get a brief overview of a specific tooth. If you're like, oh, this tooth is always giving this patient a problem, instead of having to read through all the notes and take a look, you can just quickly at a glance right click and hit view history and just see what was done if they had a bunch of work done on it. You can also in your notes make sure, so I'm just clicking that little clipboard down there. When you're doing your notes, you can put in, so whatever your note is, over here on the right hand side, you can filter it by a tooth. So let's say we did 3 MOD and then I hit save note. Now you can see that there's tooth number 3 with surface MOD. And it was a chart note. So you can put in tooth, like for restorative hygiene, you probably won't do that because unless you're doing like a sealant maybe, but it's nice for restorative if you do want to put it. So just at a quick glance, you can filter it by the tooth number and you can just quickly see your notes for that specific tooth. So I do like to point that out. I did forget to mention that. So I just put it in over here on the right-hand side where you're choosing your note. You can put it in the tooth and you can put in the surface. Does Eaglesoft integrate with Dexys? Yes. Dexys is integratable. So Tom will just put in the Dexys drivers into Eaglesoft. Yes, there is one I think that does not work that well with it. I think it's CareStream, but that's not the Dexys one. But those cameras do. Yep, Dexys is supported by Eaglesoft. Yes. So you can have those cameras. So what you would do for your intraoral photos, I'm bouncing all around here. You can either do it from view images and you do new exam and then you'd have an intraoral camera series set up. So you can do it that way. Or you can do it from the clinical screen if this is what you get used to working out of. If you hit the video images it automatically brings you, I don't have it set up. I have a Spectrum one or a Spectra set up, but it would automatically bring you to that intraoral exam. So it's less clicking. So it is nice to do intraoral photos from the clinical screen, but of course you can get to it through, if you go to view images, new exam, then you can find your intraoral series. I recommend just having a template with just a bunch of images on here. Like I have 16. So that way if you are starting to take some pictures, you're like, yeah, I took a good one here, but I would like to see this angle too. If you limit your template to only having a few images on here, then you have to just keep opening up new templates. So it's nice to have more options than none. You don't have to take 16 photos, but let's say you take 6, you still have room to take more if you want to, or you can just leave them blank. So I would just use a template that has more images than none, because we all know how it goes. You get a spit bubble in there, or they close their mouth, or it's a little blurry because you're trying to take the photo and see what you're doing at the same time. So I like to have more options than I would probably need. That way you can take more if you want to. Otherwise, if you only have a template of 4 images in here and you want to take a 5th photo, then you're like, oh, then you have to go find another template. So I like to just have one main intraoral photo template, but you guys can, of course, do what you want with that. But that's how I do it. And so with the template, with the intraoral template, I wouldn't assign it to teeth right here. You can, when it's on exam by date, you can go back into your video captures, and then you could click the image and then say, yep, these are these teeth. And then it doesn't update the whole template for you, it just updates that exam. So then that way, when you go to the chart and you want to see their intraoral photos over here by selecting the teeth, now that intraoral photo is showing up over here because I just attached it from that exam. But I wouldn't attach all the teeth from that main exam just because you don't actually know where you're taking the intraoral photos. If that makes sense. I just rambled a little bit, but so yeah, when Tom's in, he'll set up your intraoral cameras and your sensors. So that way all you have to do is, and you can get to images from here as well. If you don't want to click on there, if you just hit this little drop down arrow, you can click new intraoral video, or you can go to view images, and that brings you to your imaging screen. So you can get to everything from the chart, you can get to everything from the clinical screen, and you can get to everything from the schedule. So like I said, multiple ways to do everything. However you guys click and get there will work. I just try to show you the fastest way. But I do point out that there are multiple ways to do it. So whatever workflow works best for you. All right, how are you feeling? Feeling good? Good. All right. We're cruising along here. Clinical is a lot easier than some of that practice management stuff, just because it is a little bit more the more time it takes with training on clinical is, of course, when we're actually going to be going in and setting up your actual database. So what happens with a lot of the time is actually setting up your auto notes and actually setting up your colors and your quick pick buttons. So I anticipate being done a little bit early today. I hope everyone's okay with that. I know it's the day before Thanksgiving, but a lot of the training time that we put aside for some of this does include working on your database. So since we're working on mine, it does go a little bit quicker. So I will show you a couple other things here, and then we'll ask some questions, and then making sure that we're taking notes, and then I'll send you a general overview too of making sure you guys have the steps. And then did everyone get those videos on that email for the tutorials and the walkthroughs and being able to install the database? Okay, cool. So I'd play around with it for sure. You guys are able to, if you have like a Word document with some of these the auto note templates, I would, you can kind of pass those around and work on those together. You don't have to be in the office. You guys know how to, you can like call each other or set up like a Zoom or something and like work on notes together. So that way when you get the Eaglesoft, it's just as simple simply like copying and pasting those in there. So you can do some setup stuff ahead of time. You don't have to wait to get it done. You just have to wait to put it in there, but you can actually, start printing off the, or I can send you my quick pick button report if you want. And then you guys can take a look at that and just have an outline of how you want to set up those buttons. So that way you're kind of plugging away at some stuff prior to actually getting it. So it's not so much setup when you get there or when you actually get your data delivered. It's more just putting it all together versus having to think and then put it together. So if you guys want, I can send you my template. You can print it off and actually just put in your own codes, like write them down. So that way it takes that up. Takes less time for you. Okay, let's go through. Yes, okay, perfect. I'll send that in the quick pick list. And if you get to it, you get to it. If you don't, you don't, right? It's just one of those things. It's nice if you have it. Okay. So let's go into, I'm gonna go back into the main screen here. And let's go through the process. If you're similar to me, I like to see what's my day flow gonna be like? What's my workflow from when I get a patient from the front desk to bring them back to my chair to walking them out. So I like to go through the flow of what it's going to look like. So let's say Tyler came in, he's here. And I'm going to be taking a look at a couple of different things. So from the workflow standpoint, if you guys are having consent forms sent in from Weave, your first option is going to just be looking at the Smart Doc, seeing if he had any consent forms filled out, making sure his COVID screening form's done. That way he's good to go. He's not infecting your office. So you take a look at his Smart Doc, making sure his forms are filled out. If he needs any forms to be filled out, the front desk, you guys will handle making sure he gets those forms done. The front desk, you're going to make sure that you're editing the patient screen. This is where you would ask him to make sure that you have the correct insurance in, who the responsible party is. You're taking a look at all of this information to making sure that this is still updated and accurate. Okay, so you'd make any changes here if you got a new employer, if you got different insurance, if you got a new email address, a phone number, just double check all of the patient information while they're in the chair. Or if you have a form that you're sending out prior to, you can always do that as well. Clinical staff and front desk, you guys can all put notes in this memo if you'd like, but making sure you're taking a look at the memos, seeing if he has anything that you want to bring up during your conversation. Making sure to take note of anything that you would like. Reviewing the medical history. So this should be updating for you with Weave. So you'll just take a look at the medical history. I'm just kind of walking through exactly as if I had a paper chart. So I'm just taking a look at this medical history, seeing if there's anything that I need to be aware of. He has high blood pressure, so when he comes in, I definitely want to make sure I take his blood pressure and make sure it's not too high before we treat him today. I don't see any allergies, so we're all good to go. I'm making sure that it's signed. So you take a look at that. You can go over it with him in the chair if you would like. I don't know if you guys do that or if you just have him fill it out, but if you leave it open, you can just make sure to go through the medical history with him. Some people do, some people don't. Every practice is different. Every hygienist, every assistant is different. So whatever your workflow is, you can still make changes. Once it's been done by him, you can still make any changes that he's had in there if you need to override it. Then I would leave open his chart. So we're going to open up Tyler's chart. You can get to the medical history from the chart. So if you guys wanted to just open up the chart, you can get to all of those screens if you don't like having these buttons open on the schedule from this little drop down. So you can see that you can see the chart, his perio, his images, his medical history. Edit patient. Those are all on here for you from this screen. So you can just do it from the chart if you would like. So then I open up his chart. I'm going to take a look to see what proposed items we have in here. So if I need to talk to him about that prior to his, while he's in the chair, let's say I'm doing a cleaning for him. Be like, hey, I noticed we have, a couple of fillings we need to get in. Do you want to get that scheduled before you leave? At least get that topic of conversation flowing. Or, hey, last time you were in, we had a little bit of decay. You're due for some new bite wings. Let's take those, make sure, there's no changes to the treatment plan that we proposed. So you can go through whatever saying you want to say to him. Just take a look at it. I did not touch base on these watches, I don't think, so I'm going to do that. These yellow boxes on these teeth are what's called a watch. So if I were to highlight a tooth and hit right, and I right click, there's an option called Add Watch. I can choose, notice I have my summary surfaces. I can choose what I'm watching, the date, the comments, or you could just say like occlusal. Let's say it's sticky spot, stain, slate stick. You can do whatever you want with that. That's just going to put a yellow box around that tooth. I have to right click and hit view watch to actually see what's going on. But that's just a way to kind of point out any irregular like things that patient may be having, anything that's not quite ready to be treatment planned yet, but you want to keep an eye on, or maybe it's like a wobbly tooth that, or mom's concerned about, discoloration or whatever you want to just highlight. It brings your attention to that tooth for you. So it doesn't actually treatment plan anything. You can put a watch on it like I have on number 3. You can see that I put a watch on it and it's a gray little decay on there. You can see on my chart, I'll unhighlight it for you, but tooth number 3, I just put decay on there. So let's say I have, they're 95 years old, a little bit of decay. I'm not going to put a filling in them. They don't want it, can't afford it, whatever reason, but I did want to leave note that there was decay on that tooth. I could just go to condition and I can choose decay. And I can hit use, I pick it, and now it's highlighting it for me. So that's just another way that you can highlight a tooth or, note that we're watching that tooth without actually proposing treatment. So that's one thing that's another way you can do in the chart. Okay, back on my day. So take a look, talk to Tyler about what's going on. Okay, we actually have a couple more fillings that we need to do, Tyler. So you highlight the teeth that you want to do, pick your service code that you're proposing. Again, composite posterior because I'm on a posterior tooth. I'm leaving it under proposed because I'm just proposing it. I'm going to make this phase 3 because, or actually I'm going to do all the right side at once. So I'm going to do phase 1. I'm going to leave it phase 1. If you want to, you don't have to phase it there. And then I'm going to hit OK. So that's how I add any treatment on here. If he came in and he had 18 and 19 already completed, I can hit composite. I would change this to existing. I would choose the surfaces, that I want it to be existing. So that's how I would put any treatment on there that's already been completed. Let's say he's got some blunted roots here. I can put those on there so I can go as crazy as I want. And now you can see that they're getting added in my ledger over here. All right, I want to add a note. So doctor's in here doing an exam. I want to do a note while she's doing that so I can kind of multitask here. So I'm going to add it. I'm going to choose this little clipboard and go to note history. I'm going to, since I'm going to it from the chart, it automatically goes to a chart note. I'm going to choose my auto note template. We just did a pro feed today. Doesn't matter which one. So you can leave the note minimized too, you guys. I don't know if you take blood pressure, but you can have your notes open. So that way when you have a couple minutes or if the patient won't stop talking or you're seeing something, You know, you can be typing and just leave it open and just keep minimizing it. So it's nice just to have the notes open and you can work while you go. If doctor's yelling off treatment that needs to be done and you don't have time to, or you're still learning where all the buttons are, you can have a treatment needed line. If she's like, we need 3MO, 2D, 2DO, crown number 14. So you can put that in your treatment notes. And then after she leaves the room, you can always go back in and chart if it takes you a little bit longer to learn where the buttons are at first. So that's an option too. You can save any changes that you've made. If you are attaching services to your appointments, like what we recommended for your schedule over here, so that way you can make sure that you're keeping track of your production for the day. So let's say hygiene, we did a prophy, bite wings, and exam today. I do have to show you how to make exploding codes though, so we'll do that too. I have my exploding codes in here, so I did prophy, exam, and 4 bite wings. Since I have these 3 codes already set up, I'm going to choose that. And look, does this box look familiar to you? This is your status. Since I chose existing last time to chart those, I need to go back to proposed because I'm proposing that we did this for the day. But you're going to want to, this is where it's, let me X out of here so it doesn't do that. Choose your codes. Yeah. So whatever you do last in the system is it remembers it. So since I charted existing last, it keeps it defaulted to existing. So you guys just make sure when you're walking things out or you're adding services in, you just keep in mind what it's going to default over here. So if you're proposing it, because this is what we did for the day, we're going to walk this out to the front, right? There's 2 ways to walk it out. This is the easiest way that I found that most people remember and a lot of hygienists and assistants do. From the back, you can change the response right here. If you change it to walkout, because we want this to go out to the front, right? We did prophy, bite wings, exam. That gets rid of our ledger, that gets rid of our route sheet or a piece of paper, pink slip, whatever you guys call it in your practice. This is essentially the paperless way of telling the front desk what you did in there, what you did in the op today. So I picked my exploding code. So my first code that popped up was my exam. It'll automatically default to doc. We did it today. I changed the service to walk out right in the beginning because I'm done with it, right? We already did the exam. I'm gonna hit OK. Since all 3 of those codes are connected due to this arrow, my code list over here, my next service that automatically pops up is my prophy. This is where you can change who did the exam. So let's say it's usually Deb, but today Deb was gone, so Carrie did it. So you can change who did the prophy. It stayed in that walkout phase, so that's good. So I'm gonna hit OK. And I did bite wings. Again, it's gonna default to whoever their preferred hygienist is. So Carrie did them, so I'm gonna keep it as Carrie. Stayed in walkout, I'm gonna hit OK. Now you can see that I have, well, I've already walked out other stuff too, but you can see today I have my prophy, bite wings, and exam that need to be walked out to the front. So this is us passing the baton off to the front desk saying, yep, this is what I did for the day. Okay, so you choose what codes you did, leave it and walk out. If you forget to change it, let's say I hit, sorry, I clicked the wrong one, prophy, and I forgot to change this. It stayed in proposed, and I hit OK. See how it's red? You don't have to delete it and re-add it. You can just simply right-click and hit post to walkout, and it changes the status for you there too. So if you forget to do it, yes, it'll default to whoever the preferred hygienist is, whoever is scheduled with. So if they don't have a default hygienist, it will say whoever's chair they were in for the default. And since there's only one doctor, it'll automatically default to doctor. So yep, so you don't always have to change the hygienist. It's just whoever it was scheduled with, is going to be the name that populates on that walkout. But if there's, like, so let's say they're scheduled with Deb, but then Carrie actually saw them, Carrie will have to change it. But if it's scheduled in Carrie's chair, then Carrie will not have to change her name for the hygienist. So once you hit walkout, so those are the two different ways. You can either right click and hit post to walkout or change it in this screen right here, right here. So two ways. Once I hit save, I don't have to do anything more from the clinical end. I'm like, okay, that's what I did for the day. I proposed my treatment. I'm walking out my services that I did for the day. I hit save. You have to hit save. If you forget to hit save and it's just sitting in this chart box, when the front desk goes to open up this patient, it will not populate for them. So now we're done for the patient. Let's reschedule them. So we go out 6 months. 6 months, and I just double click. If I hit this little swoop arrow person, it'll bring back Tyler. Remember, this patient's in the quick fill list. So we always want to review the quick fill list just to see what's in their schedule. You don't have to use it. So you can see all of these composites are here. We're like, no, we don't want to use any of those. I just want to reschedule his hygiene appointment. So then you can add service and you can do your service codes to schedule them for your, let's say next time he just needs an exam and bite wings, or exam and prophy. Hit save. Cool, so I walked him out, he's good to go. Now I need to bring him up front to the front desk screen. So now we're like, hey, Tyler's all set. We already scheduled a 6-month appointment. Front desk is like, okay, thank you. When they go into Tyler's account screen now, remember, we always want to do it from the account screen just to see if there's any balance that he owes from the previous appointment, you know, so on and so forth. We're like, okay, he looks good. Next, I go to this walkout tab here down on the bottom. Now, whatever the back staff walked out for the day will populate up here. All of the proposed treatment will also populate, but do you see these boxes with the arrows checkmarked? Anything that's checkmarked is what you walked out in the back. So that's them telling you, I did a prophy, I did bite wings, I did an exam. Apparently I did 2 prophies today and I did 2 sets of bite wings. So anything that I had in that walkout state will populate for me. I can uncheck mark them if they're like, oh no, actually, I forgot I didn't do bite wings today. You can uncheck mark them. It won't bring it there. You'll hit use selected plan services. And now look, the front desk, you don't have to put in all these codes now because it was walked out from the back. You just choose the ones that were walked out and they automatically go on the screen for you. If they did not do a service, you just simply highlight the service and hit delete. Delete that item. Yep, I didn't do it. Nope, I didn't do 2 sets of bite wings. Insurance is not going to let that one go. So you can just hit this little delete button down here and it will delete any service. If they did, let's say they're like, oh, I forgot to add fluoride in there. In this little box right here with the little cursor blinking in it, F2 is a friend for you. So if I hit F2, it's going to bring up all my service codes. I don't have to memorize my service codes. I don't have to have my little cheat sheet to the side if I don't want to, because I can search by service code. I can search by description. So if I started typing, this is the fluoride that I have in here. I think it's supposed to be 1206, but let me see. Yeah. It's under topical. So whatever that first word starts with under your service codes is how it's going to find it. So since fluoride is the 4th word in, it wasn't searching for it. It was searching for topical. So you just find whatever code you want to add to. So it's not a one for all. So if the back forgets to put in a code, you can still add and make changes on the screen. It just prevents you from having to add in them walking them up front, being like, I did prophy, bite wings, exam, fluoride. And then you have to go in line item by line item and add it all in there for them. This is them just eliminating that process for you. And then you continue on. You hit save. Are you ready to process to the walkout statement? Yes. And then it brings you to your list of insurance questions you guys are going to be submitting electronically. You don't have to make any changes down here 9 times out of 10, but sometimes you do. This is, again, that box at the way bottom for remarks for unusual services. You can add in your notes right there if you would like. And then you just hit OK. That walked that patient out. It submitted that all to insurance. Once you get that bill back, you'll know if they owe any money for that prophy exam or bite wings. But that's the process from why you walk out on that chart screen to how it reflects in the front. So that kind of ties that all together from what we covered yesterday to today. I know I just went through a lot, so I'll take a pause here. Does anyone want to unmute and ask any questions, or do you want me to do it again? Do you want me to do it as if I was a doctor and assistant walking out a code? It'd be very similar, but I can do it from that workflow too if you would like. Yeah, it is. It is. Once you start clicking around and you do it, it tells you exactly what you need to do. It's just putting in the right codes, I guess. Okay, so that's how hygiene, that's how you guys would walk out your codes. Assistants and doc, that's going to be the exact same thing that you're going to do from your end, but you're just going to do it a little bit differently. So thank you, Lynn. I appreciate that. So let's say number 2 was already proposed in here, so we'll just do this. Probably not going to do both sides of the mouth in one day, but you never know. Some people don't care if they're all numbed up. All right, so let's say we have 2 and 3. We did their fillings today. All you're going to do is you're going to do the exact same thing. Since this is already proposed in the chart, you'll just highlight the 2 line items. So again, if you just click, it just highlights one at a time. So just a reminder, hit shift on the keyboard and you can highlight multiple codes at one time. And you'll right click and hit post to walkout. Now it automatically changed your services from red to this walkout color. Hit save. Walk them up front. Hey guys, Cole's all set for the day. We're going to go to his account screen, check his balance, see if anything's owed. Go to the walkout tab down here. Just wait for it. Man, we're going so good today. With the WebEx issues yesterday, I was like, all right, we're cruising along today. Of course, it's going to pause here. All right, bear with me here. There we go. Here it comes. Okay, so you can see that those 2 items were the 2 items that were proposed and completed for the day, and they were walked out. You'll see the status. So front desk, all you'll have to do is hit use selected plan services. It populates those 2 codes for you. And you just hit save and then process the walkout. And so on and so forth. You can see the fee is $181. Insurance is estimating to cover $104.80. There's no discount, and they're estimating that the patient's going to pay, owe this amount, depending on how your office flows. If you want them to pay right away, or if they have secondary insurance, you want to send it off to secondary, or if they're like, send me a bill, you can send them a bill when you actually get in the insurance payment. So that's how you can make those changes. If they have to pay the same day, that's the estimate, $112.40 down in the lower right-hand corner. Total due, I think he had an outstanding balance. Yeah, he had an outstanding balance. So this walkout, he owes $112.40. Total due is right there. So that's how you can say if they want to pay the same day. But you'll always process the walkout first. So hit yes. Submit electronically. Hit OK. And that's how you'd walk out those statements. And then when you go to account payment, the next tab on the bottom is where you can see what they owe, if they're going to pay for a check or credit card. The insurance payments, once you get the insurance check, that's how you get to the insurance check, and you can apply that filter. So remember, you'll just say if insurance paid you, 100, what did it say? Estimated like I don't know, 112. We'll just make up a number. It automatically divvies up. Remember over here, it just divvies up that $112, but let's say it's just guessing that it paid 25, but let's say they paid 30. Now you can see that you're over $5. So then you'd put in like 43, whatever they covered here. So you just go line item by line item just to make sure that it reflects exactly what the insurance is paying. So that way when they come at you, like, why do I owe? It'd be like, well, your filling was $80, insurance only paid 70, so your portion is 10. So it just kind of helps you outline what you're breaking that up to. And you just hit save. So that's the process from the front or from the back to the front. Now I have credits. Alrighty. So let's go in here. How are we feeling? Are we feeling okay with everything so far? Good, good. Perfect. Yeah, it is. Once you start clicking around, I mean, and you get these buttons set up, it's just, clicking and finding where they are. So it is nice if you have that arrow, you can see all the codes that you have over here. For composite anterior and composite posterior, we will help you set up these buttons. I have mine set up to be a smart code. So if you look over here, like with my exams, I have obviously all my exams over here. But we have a smart code set up for composites. Do you guys do amalgams in the office? No? Okay. So you won't need an amalgam button. So we'll make sure it's what's called a smart code. So if you notice when I picked number 14 and I hit I didn't have to do anything with this drop down arrow. I didn't need to add composite posterior 1 surface, composite 2 surface, composite 3 surface, composite 4 surface. The reason being is Eaglesoft has what's called a smart code. So if I were to choose just this composite code, it's automatically going to say 1 surface. But as soon as I select 3 surfaces and I hit OK, it automatically changes this code to be, let me see if I can drag this over a little bit, 3 surface. So it's smart enough to know however many surfaces you pick is what it needs to bill for. So that code is set up automatically for you in your system, but we will double check just to make sure. But same thing with an anterior code. If I choose my button for composite, it automatically says 1 surface, but as soon as I hit 2 surfaces and I hit save down here, it changed it to a 2 surface billing code. So you really can't mess up these, you don't need to know the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 surface code, 4 plus surface code numbers, because it's called a smart code. So it's smart enough to know that it's 3 surface based on however many surfaces you pick. So that's the difference. It is not smart enough to know if it's assuming you're smart enough to know if it's a posterior tooth or an anterior tooth. It doesn't automatically change. I know some softwares do. Like if I were to accidentally put a posterior code on tooth number 8, it's not going to change this to an anterior code. It's going to keep it as a posterior. See tooth 8 and it says posterior. So it's not that smart. No, it's just kidding. It's assuming that you know the difference between an anterior tooth and a posterior tooth. So just be careful when you are charting. That's why I have the 2 buttons and I have A and P to know which one I'm choosing. So make sure you pick those correctly, but you don't have to know the difference between 1 through 4 surface codes. So it will automatically do that for you. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now I'm going to go into exploding codes so that way you guys can get those set up so that way you can have those to your buttons. So on our favorite screen over here, we're going to go to list and we're going to go all the way down to, so service codes is going to be, remember where we edited these codes and added them to the buttons. List and then exploding codes, the one right under it, is going to be where I have my exploding codes set up. So you can see that I have like my adult prophy with my exam, bite wings, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So I have all my exploding codes set up. You guys are not going to have any to start, I don't think, unless if you do you have some in your current software? Do you have something similar to this where it groups them? Yes, okay. I think those transfer over, so you may or may not have to do that. So we'll just have to double check when you get your conversion. Sometimes they come over, sometimes they don't, but we will want to double check what they are. If you needed to add a new one, of course, you just hit new at the bottom. Notice I have periods at the beginning of all my exploding codes and at the beginning over here. The reason I do that is the same reason I alphabetize my auto notes with hygiene dash, crown dash, whatever dash to keep them all together. When I go to my service code list, if you have a period or a dash or a star or any special character at the beginning, it puts all the exploding codes at the top for you and it groups them together. The reason I do that is because otherwise you're going to have adult prophy is going to be way down here with adult prophy exam. So I like to keep all my exploding codes grouped together. So we usually recommend putting a period at the beginning. So that way when you're going to find these codes, they're all at the top for you. So let's go into add one. I just wanted to show you why I did that. So list, exploding codes, and let's go to new. This is the name. So I always put in a period. Let's just do, you can only have 5 characters. So I'm just gonna make up, oh, it's yelling at me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that's 5. So that's all I can do. Right here is the name. So I'm gonna do child prophy, fluoride, exam. Let's say they need a pan. Display abbreviation, I always have it match the exploding code name. That's going to be what shows up on the display abbreviation for that button, like when you highlight over the button name. And it doesn't have to be a button name, it's just going to be the descriptor. So I just have these match. This is where you would add it to a button group. So if you want to add an ED, so I want my child prophy under my child prophy button. So similar way to add the button codes, only the exploding codes have to be added to buttons through the exploding code list. Service codes can be added to the button group list through the service code list. So it's just a little finicky. It'll yell at you if you try to add an exploding code, and I'll show you what it will do if you try to do it in the wrong screen. So now I just have to add in my service codes. So over here it says add. Let's add it. If you know the code, which some people are really good about knowing all the codes, you can do that. But F2, that friend for you, hit that on your keyboard and it's going to bring up my codes. So ignore my ones at the top already. So let's try to find, I know this one. So I'm going to choose my prophy. I'm going to use it. I'm going to add another one. So highlight in the box. Let's say I know 1, 2, does I have fluoride on there? Yep. So I'm going to add that code. Add. And I need to add one more for my pan. So I think it's D333. Nope. If you mess up, you can hit delete and hit add, or you could just retype in the box which code. 0330. I was close. Close but no cigar. Okay. So now I have all 4 of my codes attached. It has my fees over here. So you can see what the total of what that potential appointment would be. I hit OK. Now you can see that exploding code is on here. When I close out and I go to my chart, under my child icon, I can now see right here. It was added right here. And that's the name. That was the display abbreviation that I was trying to explain. I couldn't think of the words I figured if you guys could see it on my screen, you'd know what I was talking about. So that's the display abbreviation right here. So that's what that means. Now, if you tried to add an exploding code under the service code list, this is what it's going to do. So if you go to list and you go to service codes, this is all of your service codes in the computer. And you're like, well, look, the exploding codes are right here. Well, watch, when I go to edit it, exploding code, can't do it. You have to do it from the exploding code list. Oh man, okay. List, exploding codes. And now I can edit it. So that's what it's going to prompt you to do. And it tells you exactly where to go. So if you try to edit something in the wrong screen, it's like, no, try it here. So let's say I have partial denture, edit it. Nope, exploding code, can't do it. Now I can just edit these ones. So I can edit these because it's an individual code. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So that's how you add exploding codes to your buttons, and that's how you add just exploding codes in general. So, I mean, if you had just like you know, an exploding code that you wanted to keep together, like let's say you had, you don't bill for like a crown seat, you know, but you want to charge out the delivery the same day, you know, you can combine different codes, however you guys want to do it, without having to select a bunch of different codes. So it just makes it a little bit faster for you to group them together. But I wouldn't get crazy with it, you know. I would just keep it for like pro fees, child pro fees. You know, you can do it like if you have like implant, I don't know if you guys do implants or not, but if you have implants, you know, SRP is nice sometimes to do that, but you can have different exploding codes. So if you guys already have them set up, you can just mimic exactly what you have in your current system and put them in here. All right, exploding codes, easy enough. Let's go into, so I want to show you how you know it's a smart code that composite was set up. So I'm going to go to list, I'm going to go to service codes, and I don't know the code of that one. So let me see, composite, no, it's under resin. Okay, so when I choose my resin, my anterior composite code, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 or more surfaces, they're all grouped together right here. If I edit that code, and I go to chart setup, so the same area. So if I wanted to add that to a button group, I would add that one to a button group. I don't have this one added because I have it as a button name, so I could add it right here. So I'll just show you just for the sake of it. Anterior. See how it says smart code setup over here, and it says use smart code for surface intervals. That's how you want it. So you can see I have my 1 surface code in here. I have my 2 surface code right here, my 3 surface codes right here. You can tell they're all right here, 4 and 5. So whenever I use that specific code and I choose 2 surfaces and I'm charting, it's automatically going to change it to that code right there for you. So that's how it knows. So that's how it's reading it. It does come over this way. It is set up for you this way, but that's how you can group like you would want to do that for your, if you ever by chance use like an amalgam. Let me see. Let's see if these ones are set up. So amalgam 1 surface, if I go to edit and chart setup, yep, the amalgams are set up too. So you guys these would already be set up for you. So you wouldn't have to add in, you know, D2140, D2150, D2160. You wouldn't have to put all of those in to your button groups because just adding one of those codes to that button will automatically bill for the right one depending on how many surfaces you pick. So it'll change it for you. Oops, tooth. And now it charged you for a 3 surface filling. So that's how it knows. If you're like, how the heck does Eaglesoft know that? That's how. So if it's not set up properly, you just go to list and service codes, choose it, you know, whatever the code is. But this will be set up for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But just in case somehow it got deleted for whatever reason, That's how you re-add it. I don't expect you to remember that. If you ever have any issues, you can call myself or you can call the PTC and we'll easily be able to figure that out and help you out with that too. But I just like to show you how that's how it knows. So in this little smart code area. Okay. So that's how those work. Do we have any questions? So I know we covered treatment planning yesterday. I'll just briefly go over this. So when we get into the chart and you start treatment planning all of these items, notice how I made that payment for coal. Now it turned it from this red color to the purple. It went to the purple walkout as soon as I hit save. So I'm going to right click and hit post to walkout. Now it changed that purple. Once I'm in the account screen and submit that to insurance, it changed it to that maroon color. So it does all of that without you guys having to do anything. It just updates for you, which is really nice. But let's say a treatment plan, you know, we talked about treatment planning yesterday, but let's go over that again briefly. So I'm leaving on proposed. Ugh, I had it on walkout. So if you ever mess up like I just did, just highlight the teeth again and hit edit. It responds it to walkout, so I want to leave it on proposed. So there we go. I didn't do it. Oh, I'm on 2. Okay, it changed 2 for me. So I'm going to delete 14 and 15 just so you can see. Okay, so 14. So we have number 2, we have an MOD proposed. Okay, so now I'm going to propose that treatment. Today we did an exam, but I want to walk that exam out because we actually did that exam. We did a prophy and we did bite wings today. Okay, so this is going to be a common thing that you guys do. Propose treatment and walk out the items that you did. Hit save. Okay, so now we're going to walk them up front. Front desk is going to, hey, Cole needs to come back in to see doctor. Okay, sounds good. Cole, I have some availability on Friday, November 20. Would you like to come in at 9:30? Sure. Double click to schedule. I'm going to do the little swoopy guy because I just had Cole's chart open. This is where it says planned services exist for this patient. Do you want to select these services? Always hit yes, just to see what's on there. You can see that because the back proposed tooth number 2 MOD, all I have to do is check mark that, hit use selected planned services, and now it just attached that MOD to that schedule for me. I can hit save. Oh, I'm on yesterday's. I'm on the wrong day. Ignore that. So now it automatically put that in there for me and I know what to schedule for. Now when I go into Cole's chart, it changed it from proposed to accepted because he's scheduled. So now all you have to do when Cole comes back in, we're all set. We did this composite. I right click, post to walkout, hit save. Front desk goes to walk Cole out for that. Ignore that, I messed that up last time. Okay, we go into the walkout. I didn't mess it up, I added too much money to what was actually on there. We walked out his, I already said he did a prophy, so we don't do that. We were walking out his composite. Yep. Save, process walkout, yes. Submit to insurance. Now when I go into Cole's chart, it turned it to that maroon color, and that's how you know it's been completed. Does that make sense? How you would add it from the treatment plan from the back to schedule it to walk it out? Because you proposed it in the chart, it automatically, when you go to schedule it, tells you that he had treatment planned. Do you want to treatment plan that? So because the back, Lori, because the back proposed it on the chart, when the front desk goes to schedule that, it knows what's proposed. You don't have to use those proposed items. Let's say, because I already walked out all of Cole's services, you can still add other services. So you don't have to use what's treatment planned. It's just best to use what's in the treatment plan because that's going to be pulling from the chart. Otherwise, if you pull in add a service down here and you do, like let's say you find the actual code right here, it's going to change. It's not going to pull from the chart. So you just want the chart to pull back and forth, if that makes sense. So you want it to do that. So you can still add in other codes. Like let's say he's in here and he's like, oh, also while I'm in here, I want to buy some bleach. Oh, I have to pick a tooth. I want to buy some bleach. So you can still add services here. Oh my gosh. I can still hit add service down here and find like bleach, and add that. So it's not a one for all. It's just if you're scheduling something that's proposed from a chart, you want to pull it in and it automatically populates. If nothing pops up, there was nothing treatment planned for him. So that's how you'll know if something was put in there or not. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that. So then if you were to go into, where are my schedules? I'm going to go to month at a glance to see where my patients are. The 18th. Okay. Okay. It's not listening to me right now. Okay. So last week I had patients in here. So let's say, Charles has those. Once you propose it in the chart, the treatment plan items in the chart. So let's put on something for number 7. Let's just do one surface and save it. So now front desk, if you guys are still handling the treatment plans, when you go to hit this treatment plan icon as well, that same box is going to pop up that says proposed treatment. Oh, I'm highlighted on it. All right, let's see. View all items here. I'm sorry, I already had a treatment plan for him open. So if I hit view all items, it now populates all of the treatment plan items that I have for that patient. So if you can't find it, it's probably on view items by plan. If you go to view all items, anything that's proposed will be on there. And then you can see the date that it was planned. So I can see today I treatment planned a one surface for number 7. And then you can continue to process the treatment plan. You can add more codes by hitting add. So that's how you can do that for not. And now, does the screen look familiar from yesterday? So this is the same exact screen. It's just instead of you having to individually add in all the treatment plan items like how Deb showed you yesterday by hitting F2 in here to bring up all your codes, it'll bring in all the codes from the chart. So the treatment plan icon talks to the chart icon. So whatever is proposed in the chart will populate in this treatment plan for you. And then you can process it, phase it by items again, by phasing it, creating different plans, and so on and so forth. You can create an appointment from here. So that's how this all ties together. So whatever the back does in the chart will populate up front for you to make a treatment plan. Okay. So that's how those two areas communicate. So I'm not sure if back will be doing treatment plans or if it's still going to be similar to like what you guys do now where they tell you what they need and then you can do that. So as long as they're putting it in the chart, that eliminates the headache for you guys up front trying to add it all in there. All right, what questions do we have? Any? You can unmute your lines. There is a messenger. I don't think we covered that. Eaglesoft Messengers, it's like an IM system that you guys, I'm not logged in, but I'll pull it up here for you. And whoever's logged in, I don't have anyone obviously in my system, but it'll bring it up for you. And it's like a little IM box that you guys can communicate back and forth to each other. So mine doesn't work because I don't have anything, but it'll populate who's in. So each person, when they log in, will have a username. And I won't X out of this yet, but you can see, it'll have everyone's name of like your usernames over here, who you're sending it to. You can send a message to everyone by hitting select all, and then there's a message log, and you can send quick messages. So you guys can IM each other throughout the day, which is really fun. And it'll blink orange at you on the bottom when it comes to like if you have a new message. So because I don't have any systems, if anyone else logged in, it's not going to let me do it. But you guys, and they don't sign me up for it, but you guys will be able to access the messaging. So I do like to point that out there. So yeah, I would definitely recommend if you guys can get that on your computer, walk through the steps of playing in the sandbox, clicking around, practice, treatment planning, practice going through the perio chart, practice making fake payments for the accounts, adding patients, editing patients, just walking through like your typical day of what you do. Once you get in the system, that's where some questions will pop, start to come up until you actually get your hands on it. I know it's kind of hard to just watch me talk and watch my screen until you actually get hands-on. At least that's how I am. I'm more of a hands-on learner. So we'll be here for you guys on the day that the data goes live. We'll help you with the cleanup, the back data entry, getting your quick pick button set up. So we'll help mimic your system as best as we can, and getting your colors set up and all that, so that way you guys are ready to go. I know Jess asked about having patients that day if just front desk is working on the back data entry and all of that, but there is quite a bit of setup when it comes to, the quick pick icons, getting your notes set up, walking through the patients. It just depends. I would definitely block off the morning of no patients, but you just don't know how long things will take for setup. And working on the system and getting your notes in place. If you have patients in and out of the ops, the phone's ringing, you're trying to do walkouts on paper, then you have more back data to enter. So I would just kind of keep that in mind for that day. Depends on like if you really want to get it all set up in the morning and then run live with it in the afternoon. I mean, it just depends on how you want to work that, but I would definitely block off the morning. And then if you have patients in the afternoon, just be aware that sometimes things take a little bit longer to set up than you anticipate. So just know that you might have to stay later that day or so on and so forth, come in early the next day to finish up, but it's up to you on how you want to handle that part. And then I just want to make sure it's ready to go. You guys feel comfortable before we have you guys dive in and be like, okay, go. So we can figure that out too. And you guys can, maybe we do get some crews on through in the morning and you guys, can see patients in the afternoon. It's totally up to your office, but I would recommend at least blocking off the morning to make sure everything gets set up and put in there correctly. Especially with Tom there having to go into every computer and install the drivers too. So we want to make sure that those all get set up. And then you can always have the afternoon if you guys have questions and want to go through some other stuff, you know what I mean? Like you guys can have the afternoon to be like questions and play on it. But up to you guys. Okay, blocked off to 1:30. Okay. Yeah, I told the PTC we want the data dropped early in the morning. So what time is like ideal for you guys to be in the office for them to remote in? Is like 8, 9, 8? Okay. All right, I'll let them know to plan on 8. So what they'll do is they'll just remote into your server computer and then they'll drop the data into the server computer and then they have to go in and do it on all the computers, but it's just it's really quick once they get it on the server. So 8 o'clock will be good. So I'll let Tony know. She is the one in charge of your conversion at the PTC. You might have talked to her, Jess. I know you talked to Kayla when you guys reviewed the data. So, okay, we went through everything. So I would recommend watching those videos there. The link that I sent you guys on the email yesterday was, it first populates to have the front desk, but there are the clinical tutorials as well on that FAQ page. You can't get to it from your database yet, but when you're on a web browser, I think I put it in there, but it's just www.pattfaq.com. And this brings you to this page here, and you can just type in, let's say you want to type in chart. Quick tour of the chart video, chart preferences, using the chart module. So you can do all of that. Over here on the left-hand side are hot topics. So very common is this hot topic, the Eaglesoft front office training videos. It says front office, but it has a practice management area. So if you open up all of these little links, it has different videos. It tells you how long they are. Some of them are just tutorials, so or interactive tutorials. So when you get into it, it actually like prompts you through like click here, and then you're actually clicking, and then it brings you to the next step. So it's like an interactive tutorial, which is really helpful. But if you uncheck mark this, there's a clinical button that you can open up, and there's advanced imaging, the perio tutorials, and then charting videos. So there is some clinical stuff in here too. So you guys can play around with the clinical side. Type in the search bar. I always say, some people try to get like really like lengthy with this. It's just more keywords, like a couple words in here. Otherwise, it's not that smart, but this is free to use. So everyone has access to this FAQ page. So I would use that if you guys have questions as well. Okay. Okay. All right. Do we have any questions? You guys can unmute yourselves if you'd like, or you can feel free to chat me. Not yet, yeah. I know. Get it downloaded, start playing around with it. And then once we get live, closer to the live day, we can always set up, you know, making sure things are going well. But we will have a trainer on the call with you to go through all the settings and preferences and setup and all of that. So don't worry, you guys this isn't your last training. I'm here to help you guys to make sure it goes smoothly and make sure you guys feel comfortable within the software. So we don't leave you high and dry. All right. Well, Jessica has my number. I think, Docker, you have my number as well. So feel free to reach out with any questions that you may have. Otherwise, everyone start working on your turkey and desserts, and everyone have a good Thanksgiving. It's been a pleasure. I'm glad today went smoothly. So yes. All right, everyone. When I get the recording, it does take a little while, especially because it's a couple hours long. Once it downloads, I'll fast forward it. I'll forward it on to your email. So if you guys if you have a spare almost 4 hours to continue watching another video, it's good to turn it in. I know, Lori, it's just my boyfriend and I, so we're like, what do we do? But we got a big old turkey, and hopefully we don't burn the house down. All right. Take care, everyone.